Okay, we're gonna start our meeting. I don't know about you, it was nice and cool in here, then you walked in and now it's warm, so I don't know what happened. First roll call, my name is Bob Carlson, I'm the first selectman. We have Selectman Brett Mastriani, Selectwoman Nicole Porter, and as usual, we start with a pledge of allegiance. Thank you for that. Public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's something that's not on the agenda you'd like to speak about, now is your time.
Armstrong from Moyassup Lake Road, Armstrong, Kent. And I won't bore you too long, right? But it's about pickleball, okay? And we had a long conversation, my wife and I, with Tom Fabian last night. About 5 years ago, she and I put the court in between the two tennis courts up there. So it's been there about 5 years, and it's kind of like a temporary court, but we use it, we play on it. It's really not enough space for the amount of people that want to play. And some people might say is, well, we don't see too many people there. Well, the reason you don't see too many people there is because we don't have a permanent net, okay? The net is locked up in the storage facility down there, and you can't give everybody in town the combination to that storage facility because they've got all kinds of equipment stored in there, and before long, it'll be gone. So Tom told me that apparently, Bob, he talked to you a while ago, okay, about using the old basketball court over here, you know, as a place to probably put a court or two over there. Well, I went down, I spent some time down there this morning and measured it all up. The space is 48 feet wide by 90 feet long, all right? A court for pickleball is 20 by 44. Now that 20 by 44 is the actual playing surface. You need room on the side. You need room beyond the service lines. If you don't, you're going to get hurt. My wife has broke both her feet, for playing on courts, okay, that do not have enough room, from behind the service line or whatever, running into fences or whatever. And because that's asphalt and then it drops off, it's an unsafe surface. So what you would have to do, okay, and it's a good place to have them over there. We actually could put 3 courts over there with a little side work. Now on the 90 feet length, if you would have ripped that back, excavate out about 8 feet deep on each side, 8 feet wide on each side, put about 3 inches of processed gravel, another 3 inches of asphalt, you could actually put 3 courts in there and have plenty of space on the backside and plenty of space in between. All right. I don't know what gravel and blacktop would cost. He gave you an estimate for, I think, seal and lining that place at one time. And then the other thing would be the purchase of 3 nets, because he said, well, it may be too soon to put permanent nets in there, not knowing what's going to happen to all the other grounds and everything else. So a net, medium, a fairly decent net's about $200, with all the equipment that you need. So maybe about $600 for 3 nets, plus the cost of whatever you're doing up there. If you guys got any connection or know anybody up the highway department, I'm sure we could, there'd be a good project for it. So, that's what I wanted to bring forward, because pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the United States, if not the world. Won't be long before it'll be in the Olympics, and won't be long before the high schools will be playing it. So I think we need to get up to speed and start doing something in town here. Because every other town, not every other, but most of the towns are putting in courts. And if you got the courts in there and they're set up properly, the residents are going to be coming out and play. And he talked about, putting together a program for teaching, whether it be young kids or old people. And it's a good game for old people. And so it's my comments. Take it for what it's worth.
Before you leave, yes, we did discuss it. So we know we have a meeting coming up in the fall. It was supposed to happen on June 24th, but we pushed it back because of graduation, and we thought people were leaving town about what to do with those grounds. And I'll let the other selectmen comment on this, just my opinion. I agree with you on the growth of pickleball. I think it's a popular sport, and I also understand why tennis players and pickleball players don't get along because of the lines. It gets very confusing sometimes. It's like when you lay volleyball courts on top of a basketball court. I think that's a perfect location. Is there a way you can use those without doing the top and the 8 feet on each side? Is the way they can be used now with temporary nets and maybe taping out the lines for a short period of time? Or you can just get one court out?
One foot, because you won't have enough room. If you went sideways this way, being 48 feet, right, you need 44. That gives you 2 feet on each end, right? And then you're into the rough,
Mhm.
right? You're gonna sprain ankles, you're gonna break ankles or whatever. If you're, so the only way to do it is to pull it around lengthwise, and then you got plenty of room, but you can't put them side by side because, you're 20 feet wide, 2 courts would be 40. That leaves you, a couple of feet between each court and a couple of feet on the end.
Would those basketball courts have to come down for you to accomplish what you wanted to do?
No, if you put them sideways, the nets could stay there. It wouldn't be in the way.
Okay.
Because by putting 3 courts in there, you'd have 5 feet on the end, 10 feet in between each court, and another 5 feet in the other.
So until the beginning of September, when we have that community conversation and we discuss what we're gonna do with the entire property. And I know there's no funding in there to do what you want to do as of right now. There are opera funds that are gonna be left over that we may be able to, if the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance agree, maybe we can donate or use some of those opera funds to repurpose this property out here, which would not just be that, but there might be a trail, there might be something else that goes in there, whatever the town wants to do with it. I'm sure the town doesn't have an appetite to spend a lot of money. But if there's money left over in ARPA funds and we can use some of it for that project, the town might want to do that. So, something that would benefit the entire town. But again, it's premature not having that meeting until early September. However, if you could figure a way to take the net that we already own and tape it and use the one court for now, that's a possibility. And 2, until we can find out some other, because it doesn't make sense for us to buy 3 nets if you can't only use one court at this time.
Now, the problem is that if you put one court over here, then you gotta find a place to store the net. Right now, we lock the net up in the storage, box.
Well, we have a building there. There's a white storage building there now. I'm sure I could store it in there if you had to. So it's not, I don't think that's an issue as far as storing that, because that white building we're talking about,
Yeah.
it's a garage. So the school had taken some things out of there, like that's where they kept their lawnmowers and things, and we will eventually keep our lawn equipment there too, but as of now, there's probably enough room I can't imagine that net takes up a lot of space.
No, it doesn't.
But comment?
Yeah, I started doing some research after the last rec commission meeting regarding that. And there are some products that we'd be able to get or that are available to do it yourself, where you could roll it on just like blacktop. So you do the different colors. It's a few companies make it, come in 5-gallon pails. Because I was thinking, and we should discuss this at some point, but September is the meeting for it. The likelihood of things actually getting rolling after that, we all know how government works to a certain extent. So it could be months or until next year. And I feel that is just sitting there vacant when it could be used. So if we could come up with some dollars to be able to at least buy the product and maybe get some volunteers to work on actually doing it for one court for now. And then after that conversation, look further into it. But the rec commission does have ARPA funds themselves as well. So if you went to the commission and talked to them a little bit, but I think maybe it's something we talk about on one of our future agendas to come up with hard costs on just the product and then see if we can get some people do it.
The way it works right now, we've got the one court in the middle of the 2 tennis courts.
Yeah.
And on the weekends when we play, we have 8 to 10 people that come, that show up. So we do use the other tennis court. All right, and there's usually no one there at that time using that court. So we do use that other court. There are some other lines on it, and I don't know why they're there, but they're close to what the pickleball court size is. All right, and generally and Thomas gives the okay, put a couple chalk marks down just to indicate the exact size of what we got to play to. So that gives us 2 courts to play in. If we move down here, they only got one. It's really not enough room,
So you'd rather
accommodate-
nothing
It's
compared to
not
one for now.
It's not enough room to accommodate the amount of people. you know, that would come that bring.
So unfortunately, like, if you think about that, then we would have to wait until our discussion to
Well,
increase the size of something like that.
Could you use those two courts at the rec and then have somebody else playing up here? Do you have to be at the same place?
You don't have to be, but then you gotta buy the nets.
But you said the net's at $200, right? So it's not like it's gonna break the bank.
No.
So,
But the problem is that when we get a group of players, you know, we play against each other, we play, you know, and just switch in and out depending on the winners and losers and stuff like that. So it's best to keep the group together. If you split the group up and send some down here, and you've got some up there, they get to play, but we don't get to play as a group.
so it sounds to me like it may be a project that we can pull off and maybe in the spring have what you want here, depending on what we can do with ARPA funds and what the town decides they want to do with the property. No matter what gets done with the property, there was never an indication that we were gonna rip up that basketball court. Why would you? It's there. It's a perfect court.
The surface you got there, the asphalt surface you got there, is very good surface. Actually, it's better than the next place.
If,
It's small.
so since these courts are temporary courts, you put them up, I mean, the net, you put
Yeah.
them up, take them down. So you could have people play basketball on it too, correct?
Yeah, leave the net up there. Yeah. Just, be nice and put lines. Those, in other words, line it off pickleball and leave it there.
And then Nicole?
No, just complete, support and agreement. Interested to see, for the community conversation and where that goes. I know that we talked about it at one of the election days, so I think it's very up and coming and needed. Would love to see it somewhere up at the rec field. But certainly we have something prime and ready to go, there.
And there's plenty of parking.
And- Yep.
And the tennis players can play tennis while the pickleballers are playing pickleball. So
Mhm.
thank you, Art, for that. I appreciate it. Anytime you want to stop in and talk more about it, you know where to find me. Right? Thank
The
you.
the next rec commission is August 3rd, is that right? Okay. So if you can get the commission on board, I mean,
Okay, is there any other public comment on non-agenda items? Anything online, Christine? No? Okay, any comments by either selectman? General comments?
I have a comment.
Oh, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead. Who's this?
Sorry. Hi, Patricia Oakes, went to Chug Hill Road. Actually, Wrights Road is our driveway. The missing letter on the transaction of this property transfer that the town owns has been found, and I have obtained a copy of it. Number one, this transaction was not a gift or donation as stated by KNSA, as the property was in arrears at the time and was relieved of those taxes. Number two, the letter clearly states the seller of the property was aware and understood that the town of North Stonington, at the time, was looking for alternatives and options for future affordable housing development. Clearly, this is a misrepresentation of the facts by KNSA, who stated that it was the owner of the property's desire and wish to develop the property on Winter-Chug Hill Road as affordable housing. That is misinformation and should be corrected. It was not their desire and wish. It was their understanding that the town of North Stonington had an affordable housing committee. Number three, KNSA must and should publish a correction or retraction in the North Stonington Quarterly to all residents who read it, as everyone evidently reads it rather than attending virtual meetings, the quarterly. An apology for publishing false and untrue information would also be proper and an ethical thing to do for this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? On non-agenda items? Okay. Hearing none, no comment by the selectmen at this point, so the first selectman report in correspondence. It's ironic that Mrs. Oak brought that up because I was going to read that letter at tonight's meeting. As she had mentioned in her comment that, yes, the letter that was referenced in the meeting at the last Board of Selectmen meeting about affordable housing that nobody seemed to find was, it was found. It was brought to me at Town Hall. And I will read, it's a short letter. It's only 2 quick paragraphs. Dear Mr. Mullane, please be advised that the undersigned represents Ramanex and Marathon, Michigan Limited Liability Companies, which owns the real property set forth in the deeds attached hereto Exhibit A and Exhibit B, which shows the property up at Winterjog, hereinafter referred to as the properties. It is Gramenex and Marathon's understanding that the town of North Stonington is looking for real property upon which developers can build low-cost and affordable housing. Gramenex and Marathon are interested in donating the property to the town of North Stonington. Please consider this correspondence as also giving the representatives of North Stonington to have access to the properties for whatever due diligence is required to complete the donation process. As always, your cooperation in this matter is appreciated, and it's signed by Representative Gramenex. So I think the sentence in question is, as Mrs. Oaks said, that the KNSA had mentioned that the sellers, or in this case, the donation of the property, the people who were donating it had wished that they had wished that the town would use it for affordable housing. That was their intent. That was what their hope was. The sentence says, it is Gramenex and Marathon's understanding that the town of North Stonington is looking for real property upon which developers can build low-cost and affordable housing. So I will have everyone can look at that sentence and understand it as they feel free, but that is the way it is written, and both selectmen have a copy of this letter, correct? Okay. As far as the quarterly goes, that would be up to the editors if they wish to do a retraction. Again, the quarterly won't be out again until November 1st, I believe, so it would be up to them to do that. Next, one last thing, to let both the selectmen know, we talked about steep grants and funding. And we were told earlier in the year there would be no steep grants in this coming year, 2023. We have just found out as of Friday afternoon, after we already did the agenda for this evening, that there's going to be a steep grant available. I have copies for you. And the application date is due August 18th. So I know last time we got this and it was felt that maybe the town had sat on it and didn't act right away. So I'm giving you the opportunity to look at the eligible projects for steep grant funds. Think about what we might be able to use it for, and we can start working on that sooner instead of later. So that's good news that the application date, August 18th, we got this well in advance, and the last time we're going to get on it right away. So any questions on that?
Do you have what the available funding is this term?
I don't,
Did they
I
announce that?
can get that for you. Do you have it, Christine?
So it's up to $500,000 with a 20% match from the municipality.
So pretty much same
Same
as
as
last.
last. Yep. I can forward you guys the original email that came out that has the application and all the materials. I'll send it tomorrow.
Perfect.
And just pay attention to projects eligible for steep funds include, and it tells you the list.
And shovel ready are a preference, correct? It's not mandatory, but it's a preference to get
It
it.
is. Now, there's one caveat. As you know, we're listed in the 25 distressed communities in the state of Connecticut. When you're listed as a distressed community, there's other funding you can go after over the course of the year. If you go after a steep grant, sometimes that eliminates you from going after some of the other funding of a distressed community. We did not chase any of that last year. I don't know what that consists of this year, but my feeling is to at least look at possibly getting a steep grant. And then I would hate to not go after a steep grant, then find out there's no funding we need that we can get through the other opportunities. So, but that is something that can fall into play.
Bob, on this, do you think we can send out an email to the other commissions, letting them know about this and any potential projects that they were thinking about? So I know in the past, years and years ago, that's how it worked. So some of the projects that we did use with Steve was the tennis court resurfacing and the bridge walking over to the rec center from the schools. But I know that they did reach out to other committees and say, hey, this is coming up. If there's anything you're working on or thinking about, forward it over to the selectmen to look at as we talk about the steep project.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I think that'd be a good idea, actually. This would not happen between now and September, just so you know. As you said, tennis court resurfacing, pickleball resurfacing could happen too. But it would probably be something that would happen next year. Okay. Is it? Is there? That's all I had on selectmen comments. Any comments, questions? Hearing none? Okay. Agenda number 6, Lake of Isles Conservation Easement. What I'd like to do, our attorney, Rob Avina is here. Chairman of our Conservation Commission is here. I think I see Chris that's here from representing, I imagine, the tribe and Hull Forest Products. So I'm just going to tell a quick story of why we're here talking about this. Back in the wintertime, it was brought to my attention that I think Bill Ricker was driving down Swanton Road and saw that there was disturbance in one of our areas that he believed to be a conservation easement. And it was, we found that it was, and he called a couple of his members, and let me know if I'm wrong on this, Bill, called a couple of his members and they went and they walked the property. After that, myself and the other 2 selectmen also walked the property off Swanton Road. And there's about a 20-foot wide opening of trees cut down and a kind of a logging road put in that may go as much as 300 yards into the woods. Christine Dias, the Director of Finance and Administration, and Bill went on a golf cart ride on Lake of Isles to look at some other conservation areas, and they found a second area that had been disturbed. Brought this immediately to the attention of the Mashantuckets. I talked to Jeremy Whipple, who I thought would be here, but I don't see him, that this could be an issue. It was going to be an issue, and that could be. And we had to discuss it right away and to cease and desist on what you're doing, which the tribe did right off the bat. They they stopped what they were doing. Since then, we've had a number of meetings. Conservation Commission has met on this numerous times. Town attorney's been involved. We met with the tribal council. And we thought, as the selectmen thought, why don't we do this, have the Conservation Commission come back to us with their thoughts on how we should handle this. Have the tribe come back with their thoughts and then have the attorney kind of come up with what he thinks, and then we as a board will decide. The decision rests with the Board of Selectmen, and that's what we hope to do. Couple other things with this is that the town has to protect conservation easements. It's our job. And if we know of it happening, we have to stop it. And we have to, there is some penalty to pay when it happens. You just can't say, well, I'm sure you made a mistake and let it go and move on. Because that sets a bad precedent. We have multiple conservation easements in the town of North Stonington. And myself and Bill Riga, he crafted a letter. I read it and signed it. We sent out to every conservation easement owner in town, just to let them know, you might have bought a piece of property and not even known you had a conservation easement on it. I don't think I really knew what a conservation easement was until this happened, but now I do. And for all I knew, I could have had one on my property. I don't. But people did not all know. We sent out letters and people started calling town hall and said, what are you sending me? Why am I getting this letter? And we had to educate them, and we told them that you could go to town hall, and it was in your deed that you signed. But you know, sometimes when people buy property or buy a home, you flip through and you sign it and you're not reading all the fine details. So we wanted to make sure that what just happened here did not happen again. So we forewarned all the people in town. And Bill, do you know what was the number of conservation easements? Do you know? 30. Okay, so 30 letters went out. Also, I want to talk a little bit about the Mashantuckets in the town and our relationship. So this is a map of the town, and I don't expect you to see it except for the red. The red is all property owned by the Mashantucket Pequot tribal nation. They are one of the largest landowners in town, and because of that, they're one of the largest taxpayers in town. Since I've been in office, I've tried to work best as a good neighbor with the tribe, and I feel it's been reciprocated, the tribe with us. I've spoken to Rodney Butler on a number of occasions. We don't always agree on everything, but we agree that we want to be good neighbors. Rodney's actually a citizen of North Stonington. There's things that they've asked if I could help them with, and I have. There's also things I've asked them to help me with. One thing in particular is the new firehouse has a very shabby looking landscaping outside of that $6.5 million building. They were gonna do a complete landscaping job for us last year. And all they were gonna do is put up a little sign that said, gifted by the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation. And the fire company was good with that. I was great with it because I think, okay, we can get that landscaping done without the town paying any money for it. And it was showing good neighborly work by the Mashantucket Pequot towards the town. I think it's important that having the tribe so close and doing things together makes sense. And with that said, I'm thinking that when it comes to this ultimate decision, we have to keep that in mind. Again, as I pointed out earlier, that we do have an obligation, however, to protect our conservation easements and to not set a bad precedent. With that said, I'd like to have, if possible, have the Conservation Commission Chair speak for a few minutes on what the Conservation Commission would like to see. If there's anyone from the tribe here, they could speak. And I know our attorney has spoken to their counsel. And if they're not, then our attorney can speak onto that conversation. And actually has his own ideas on what he think we might be able to do. And then we as selectmen will decide. It doesn't have to be voted on and decided this evening, but at least we want to hear from all parties and come up with a decision fairly soon on what we think should be going from here. So, Bill, do you have a moment?
Bill Ricker, 421A Wyasip Road. I happen to be chairman of the Conservation Commission. I want to point out that there are 6 other members of the Conservation Commission who have been a party to all of these discussions here tonight. Jason Mancini, Steve Colgan, Monica Dumont, Doug Farron, Arnie Blix, and Bob Pigorsi. So they've been a part of this since March, when I was notified that there was cutting on Swantown Road on a weekend. We went out. We found that there was a mistaken belief that the town had approved this. They actually had submitted to the town their process, what they were planning to do, what they were planning to cut, how they were planning to restore. All of that was submitted to the town, and it was their belief that that was approval. The town does not approve what happens on private land, but it would be the responsibility of the landowner to refer to the deed. And there is a deed written on every parcel in town, and a specific portion of a deed that is written on every conservation easement in town. It's incumbent upon the landowner to check their deed to see what would be allowed and what wasn't allowed. We've had several meetings with both council. Some of our members, all of our members, I believe, have walked the property, as well as the Board of Selectmen. We have met with Jeremy Whipple out at the farm, along with some of the Department of Agriculture foresters who've enlightened us and given us pause to modify some of our earlier discussions. It was first believed that we should ask the Mashantuckets or their designee to replace what was taken down illegally, and that's been modified. I will read to you, primarily for the audience present and at home, read to you our most recent recommendations that we submitted a couple of weeks ago to the Board of Selectmen. As stated in our previous May undated memo, we proposed our final recommendations. We postponed our final recommendations another month until the attorneys met and responded. Though we have received no word to date, we submit the below listed 4 recommendations for our following our extensive deliberations. One, the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation and their assigned permanently stop all further timbering in all of their conservation easements and abide by the intent of the deed as recorded. Two, Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation to pay all attorney costs related to these intrusions and related remedies. Three, the Mashantucket Tribal Nation, Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation, or their assigns, restore the area with appropriate native plants, including but not limited to mountain laurel, ferns, native sedges. This is a change from an earlier draft of a recommendation, I add, draft that was sent to you, because before we met with Jeremy Whipple and those foresters from the Department of Agriculture, we felt that they should be replacing the trees that were cut with other trees. We were informed and accepted the fact that if we were to put saplings to replace that which they had cut down, the canopy would still be so protective and covered that those saplings would have little chance for growth. But as happens with forest, there will be seeds in the land that is being resurfaced, be smoothed out, with all the slash taken out. There will be seeds, actual seeds that will be replenished there, and that can be augmented with other natural and native plants, such as the ones we suggested. Four, the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation to place alternate parcels of land in a conservation easement to offset that which was cleared in the two disturbed parcels, and to or forfeit the value of the cleared timber and place it in the town's land acquisition fund. I'm sure that will be some discussion that you folks will likely want to have. It was further decided, as this, by the way, is in the Attorney General's directives, that if there is criminal intent, there would be liability on behalf of the people who were criminally involved. It was further decided by the Conservation Commission that it is not believed there was any criminal intent by these actions, and as such, no judgment need to be placed on the owner of the property or the offending party whose actions and responsibility it was to assure compliance with the deed. These recommendations were placed in a motion, seconded, and unanimously approved, voted 7-0. Now, we took these actions based on three clear, specific, and terribly important reasons. When a landowner places their land in a conservation easement, they're wanting their land to be maintained, kept and maintained in the state that they so include in the deed. If the municipality does not abide by this, the respect, the good relationship, the trust, if you will, on our landowners, that the municipality will follow through on that, is broken. Secondly, it's defined by the Attorney General that the municipality that the Conservation Commission represents on your behalf, the municipality is responsible for following the deeds that are all recorded in our vault in the town hall. And if we are not, if you are not, indeed, the upholders of those deeds, the municipality then becomes liable. And we can't place the town in any position where the Attorney General may find that the town is liable for any misaction. We want to uphold the trust of our landowners. We want to uphold the trust that they have in our town. We want to support the Attorney General's recommendation that the municipalities uphold their deeds. To this end, we make these 4 clear recommendations. It is not our right as a recommending body to make a decision, but we give these with full deliberation for you for your decision.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Brett, Nicole? Okay, thank you, Bill.
Is there any council member that wishes to add to my comments?
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be here if there's another question that we have to ask. Anyone from the tribe? Chris, were you going to speak for the tribe, or were we hoping that our attorney who spoke with their attorney would speak on their behalf? Okay, so I just asked, Chris Cassidy's in the audience. He said at this point, there was no comment by he, who represents Hull Forest Products and did the work for the tribe. Attorney Avina, would you like to speak at this point?
Sure. Town Attorney Rob Avina. Hi, everybody. So, we've been working on this, as Bill said, and Bob, a number of months. And there has been obviously, a lot of, activity in terms of going back and forth. I want to make sure that for the record, everybody kind of have a good sense of what we're dealing with. The actual, conservation easement, is recorded, in the town of North Stonington. The parties are actually the Lake of Isles LLC. So it is a real estate holding company, whose members consist of the tribe. So it itself is an entity, that granted the conservation easement to the town of North Stonington over, the land of the LLC. So it's called Lake of Isles LLC. We've worked for quite a while, and we're still working on delineating the 129 acres that original conservation easement covers. Bill Richter's done a great job presenting a draft map of where he understands the conservation easements exist. I'm trying to get a similar map out of Hull and out of the tribal folks. They sent me another one late today, but I have to admit it's got a lot of hieroglyphics on it. I still can't interpret the map very well. So in terms of clarity, I am seeking a definition from the landowner. This is a little unusual because they obviously own a lot more acreage around the golf course and the Lake of Isles than is in private conservation. So this is not an example of a neighbor treading on conserved land next door to them because they got cold that night and they went over and cut some trees for firewood. This is where the owner themselves should know better, because partial conservation easement is on their property, and they are responsible for knowing the boundaries of that conserved area. One of the issues that I don't believe Bill raised, but that the tribe is agreeing with, is that there needs to be a much better physical definition out on the property of where that 129 acres is. Our town conservation commission has excellent badges that Bill can help them with that should be stapled or placed, affixed to the trees along any areas of access, whether it be the golf course or the public roads, where it's clearly an issue that is a conserved area and no one should impact it according to the language of the easement. The relevant language of the easement that we're talking about here is that there should be no changes to the general topography of the landscape, and that it should be maintained in its present state or condition. Topographic changes that shouldn't happen should include, without limitations, the generality of the foregoing: the cutting of trees, parentheses, except as may be required by good tree husbandry and maintenance, end parentheses. it goes on to other illegal acts within the conservation area, like drilling or excavation or removal of topsoil, none of which occurred here. Obviously, the extent issue here is that the commencement of the cutting of trees occurred, and that the town at this point has no reason to think that the exception, which is accepting as may be required by good tree husbandry and maintenance, has been shown to the town to its satisfaction or its conservation commission that that was what was intended here. We have another complication, which Bill did a good job of describing, that the town was approached by the landowner and its contractor with a request about whether or not it needed any authority to go ahead and clear its own property in what they're calling, at least on this map, harvest areas. We are delineated on a portion of their own map indicating that harvest areas, the area under the easement they're calling area treated within the conservation easement, but they also are looking to do some harvesting of trees under the Department of Agriculture. So they approached the town about where and how they should be harvesting within their own land. And we have to acknowledge that went unanswered. We did not have a planner at the time, and the town did not respond that, hey, look out for our 129 acres of conserved area. It never got to the Conservation Commission. It never got to me. And so people in the know were not able to instruct the requester, who in this case was their contractor, about what they should or should not know. Why I'm bringing that up is because something Bill mentioned about criminality. I'm not so concerned about that, and I actually disagree with a good deal of his legal analysis, but I'm the lawyer. Actually, what it talks about in the statute is called willful conduct. If willful conduct was found, then the town is entitled to 5 times the cost of remediation. I have a case in front of me where if the remediation was $65,000, the 5 times penalty was $200,000. And that would be money in addition to the restoration money. It's my opinion, and I'll tell you a little bit more in a second, that this is not, in my estimation, a willful misconduct case. Not when it is the actual property owner. There is some concern about where the areas were. They asked the town what they should or shouldn't be doing. They didn't get a response. And now I'll go into the fact that since day one, the Mashantucket tribe, through its LLC, has been cooperative. And I don't know how many people on the board are familiar with wetlands violations or zoning violations, but one of the first things I found after covering about 200 of them for towns I work in is when you tell somebody they built their garage over the property line, are they cooperative or are they just telling you, we don't care? And so one of the first tests of willfulness is, does the person respond? So the tribe has responded directly to me through their general counsel, and we have been in discussions regarding what the tribe is prepared to do to remediate and help the situation. And I'm about to go through the list that they gave me today. And they are aware of the Conservation Commission's actions. They were sent a copy of the Conservation Commission's actions. They do not agree entirely with the Conservation Commission, and we'll go over that. But they certainly have some proposals to talk to you tonight about. Now, unfortunately, General Counsel, which I tried to give notice to him about a week ago that this meeting was coming up, he had a scheduled vacation. He is on that vacation. He has asked that they appear before you probably at your next meeting. So I am here to say that they do want to be responsive. They unfortunately could not do that tonight. So I'm here sort of speaking on behalf of the town as to what conversations I have had with the tribal officials. So this is what we have so far. As he's already, Bill's confirmed by being out there, is that there has been no more timbering or thinning activities in the CE areas since it was discovered. And there's no more plans to remove any more cut trees or to enter the disturbed areas. So Bill and I were talking about that again, we have a big choice about whether we want them back into the disturbed areas. So at this point, I didn't have to go get an expensive injunction in court. The landowner has cooperated in not going back into those areas and making further damage or destruction. Next, they intend to work with their contractor to repair the stone wall located in the CE area. One of the stone walls, which we all consider critical structures in New England, was disturbed in order to get access to the area that Bill is aware of, that's in the conservation area on Swanton Road. There may be other stone walls, but for now, any stone wall that we've identified, they're prepared to repair. They're also agreeable to placing the CE signs within their CE areas. We have identified several areas that do not have any signage on them, which in any case I've read, you got to have those signs up, whether we put them up or the landowner. It's like no trespassing. You got to have the signs that you're entering a conservation area. They understand that the proper signage will be supplied by the town's Conservation Commission. As to further remediation, as we have discussed, their position is that the area is well on its way to restoration and that further planting or remediation activities may be counterproductive. If that's still an issue, especially for our Conservation Commission, they would like the committee and its chair and other town representatives are invited to come out and walk again, 2 months later now, the entire area with Hull. Take pictures, I hope, because I've got Lyme disease twice. I'm not going. And, you know, have plenty of pictures. They're cheap. It's called a digital phone. And let me know what you see and what additional remediation we would argue is necessary. At this point, they're suggesting they don't go back in and interfere those areas that, as nature would do, and I've been on the top of Mount St. Helens twice, it's amazing what nature can restore. So they're looking for that meeting, Bill, and we can talk about that before they appear again here. Finally, if they are agreeable on that, we have been discussing the legal fees incurred to date. Christine does a very good job of keeping me aware of that. So we would look to see how much my firm has expended on this particular issue, and they're willing to discuss the repayment of that. So that is what position we've been discussing from the tribal position. As the board knows, they've heard from the Conservation Commission on what their position is to date. As I say, the tribe would like to meet with the Conservation Commission members out there to see if they can get a better sense of what restoration means and whether or not it's totally necessary in this case. So that's where we are. Their tribal council was aware of the request that they put additional parcels into a CE, that they forfeit any timber money that was recovered. And in both cases, they do not accept those proposals. And I can go over tonight, if the board wishes, what would happen if we were to proceed to litigation. But I think right now we're in the stage, there's 2 stages. We either can work something out and then I come back to you with the resolution that both parties, the Board of Selectmen through the first selectman and the tribe through their representative, will sign so that we know what the agreement is to clear up this area, or we go to court. So there isn't really any other gray areas here. There is a state statute that allows us to pursue damages in our CE area. Essentially, I think I already talked about the willfulness. I don't think that is really what would apply here. If you don't ask for willfulness, you get to ask for remediation of the area. We're gonna need an expert. I need an expert to testify at trial. So at some point, we're gonna need to get and pay for an expert to get out there and estimate the amount of acreage that's been disturbed, the amount of estimated trees that were taken out, and that expert's opinion as to what appropriate restoration is and how much that would actually cost. My recommendation would be, and the court would allow the town the money to have a third party do that restoration, not the landowner. So all that has to be done in expert testimony in court. So we would be looking for restoration costs. We would be looking for attorney's fees are allowed in a lawsuit in which a CE allegation has been made under 52-56A. And of course, the third element is the willful violation, which I think we'd have a difficult, from what the cases I've read, we'd have a difficult time arguing that in this case, when notice was given to the town and we did not respond. So that's what I have at the moment. Later on, I will discuss when we resolve this particular matter that I agree with the first selectman and the conservation chair that we got the letters out, that we do a much better job of making landowners aware that they don't violate, and that we have a procedure that if someone would like to come, and I recommend the Board of Selectmen with a referral to the Conservation Commission for them to report back to you. But ultimately, to me, if somebody wants to come to the town of North Stonington, who the conservation easement was made out to, and ask for any exception to the conservation easement in order that they do good husbandry and maintenance, then it be your board that decides what exception is and isn't allowable, where it's allowable, and that your decision on the application from the landowner would be advised by your Conservation Commission, who obviously has excellent experience in this area. So I think we need to follow up with another letter to folks when this is all done and say, you know, if you have any issues whatsoever with the conservation easement, these are the procedures you have to take in town. It was unfortunate that a landowner would try to reach out to the town and there was just not a way to respond to them. So that's what I have for tonight. Again, officially, with apologies, the general counsel on behalf of the LLC was not available tonight. He would ask to be available at your next meeting, as well as I. And I hope we make a little more progress on what I can recommend to you is their final position. And then the board, of course, will have to make a decision about what they want to go forward with in a resolution or further litigation. So from a legal side, that's what I have for you. My last couple of points about Bill's points are, I know the Attorney General, I know him personally, the assistant that works on these types of cases. We are fine. We are in a great position the way we would approach this problem. The statute is clear that if we don't enforce, the Attorney General can step in and do it for us. But these conservation easements also go to Avalonia Land Trust. They go to all kinds of land trusts. They're not always enforced by towns. Whether or not you enforce is a choice you make, and how much you enforce is a choice you make. And if you don't do something appropriately, yes, the busy Attorney General of the state of Connecticut might step in and do something, but they really rely on whoever owns the conservation agreement, in this case, the town of North Stonington, to take appropriate action. But we also have to take into consideration all the other events that occurred here. So I've taken a look for you. That's my report.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Bill Ricker, thank you again, Attorney Avina, for your summary, with apologies for stepping on our attorney's toes and mentioning criminal liability. Please forgive me.
You're blessed.
I do want to give a bit of comment about the Conservation Commission needs to place more signs on property. Where we noticed the initial intrusion, 20 foot wide, within 2 feet of that intrusion was our sign. So be that as it may. 2 years ago, I gave 150 additional signs after placing signage all around Lake of Isles Golf Course itself with the manager of the golf course. He and I placed them there. I gave him an additional 150 so that he could place them on the property that I had no knowledge of its boundary, but he said he did, from the northern part, which Chris Diaz and I saw that they had further cut. They were never placed there. Jeremy Whipple, excuse me, not Jeremy Whipple, the new Lake of Isles manager of their golf course did find them when Chris and I were there, found them in the office untouched. I gave Jeremy Whipple another 150 or thereabouts, I didn't count them out, signs to be placed on properties that were originally to be placed. So the Conservation Commission, in my mind, has done due diligence in placing signage, even though having them placed there did not appear to deter them at all. In the second conservation easement, in the northern part, I think it was up by the 14th fairway. Chris and I did see 2 signs on the trees, and immediately behind those signs is where all the cutting went in the second area. So I just want to make that clarification for you, that we feel we're doing due diligence and would appreciate criticism if that is not helpful.
So Bill, and thank you for that. Is there any provision for us to go out and do an inspection once we think the signs have been installed to make sure they have been installed? Because obviously you gave them to the gentleman, you thought they were installed and they weren't. So is there a provision or an agreement with the tribe that we can go back and check that after they said they have been put up to just make sure that they are where they are?
I'm prepared to do that. We need to find out if any of the 300 now signs in their possession have been properly placed on the. So there's no need to go out and check that out if they haven't been installed yet.
I know you spoke to the new manager
Yes,
and he said he would do that. So
yes.
you have his contact information. Maybe
Yes.
you can inquire when that's going to be done and so we can inspect it. Does the Conservation Commission have the appetite to meet with the tribe sometime in the next 2 weeks prior to our July 25th meeting to go and reinvestigate what he's talking about as far as already the restoration, natural restoration that might be taking place? Have Board of Selectmen members go with you and then see what next has to be done as far as remediation. Are you prepared to accept that meeting in the next
Sure.
2 weeks? Okay.
Any or all of us are prepared to go with you. Choose to set that up with them.
And I would invite all 3 selectmen to go to it also, if that makes sense. So, Rob, how is that going to take place? Who's going to contact who, make the date and so on?
Obviously, what I'll do is contact their general counsel. I'll leave them an email tomorrow to get back to me Monday and make sure that Jeremy contacts Bill. And if you folks are interested, obviously, we can post it as a meeting or simply depending on how many commission members show up or how many boards of selectmen if it has to be posted. So I need to discuss that with general counsel. But if we keep the group small enough, then we wouldn't need to consider it a public meeting.
Well, I'm not opposed to having all 3 selectmen be there, and I don't mind calling it as a public meeting. So
Unfortunately, that means the public is invited.
that's fine.
So, well, I don't know, because it's not our property. So I have a little, let me just check that out so that
Okay.
we don't end up in that difficulty, but I will check that out. If everyone is interested, then I will look into it.
Can that happen between now and our October 25th meeting? We do, we can
Ah.
put on, July, sorry, July, I'm in the wrong month, July 25th meeting. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, I should know by, he's back on Monday, so I should know quickly here.
Okay,
One or more of my commissioners may be able to go with you before that time. I will be unavailable. As the tribe's attorney was unavailable, I'll be on vacation until, I think it's August 2nd.
okay. Sounds good. I just think that meeting makes sense as we open up space to discuss this on the 25th of July and make a decision possibly that evening. I don't want to extend this any longer than we have to. But by moving the discussion on the affordable housing back, because you're out of town, to the August 8th meeting, that opens up a window that we can spend time on this on the October 25th meeting. So
July,
what did I keep saying? August?
October.
Summer flies by, I guess, after 4th of July. Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment on what we just discussed on the conservation easements?
I have some questions.
Sure, perfect.
So for our attorney, you stated that we didn't reply to the questions. What is the town's duty to reply based on the property owner having that conservation easement?
I think well, a couple things. I refer to it, number one, for willfulness. It'd be hard to prove willfulness in court if they want to testify that they tried to contact us. So after that, you get into negligence. It's still negligent of them not to know where they cannot go on their own property.
Right.
And the conservation deed is clear that from everything we've seen, and we could use a few more pictures, these are pretty much, I don't know how to describe it, but it's an open clearing event. You know, it doesn't appear to be selective cutting because of, I can't say gypsy anymore, because of the woolly moth or because of any other area. It looks as if they wanted to do some harvesting.
Mhm.
So they should have known right away that that's not even permitted. Why even ask? So I have some issues there, but I wanted to point out to the board that if we were to go forward, I don't think that's a willfulness act. I think
Right,
they
so
were
it
at least reaching out. Yeah.
pretty much just applies to the willful
Yeah.
misconduct. Okay, I just want to be.
You can go to the microphone.
The notification process, what we always do with a logging job, and it was to the land use office to go to the Inland Wetlands Commission, who oversees these. So that was the notification.
So it was nothing about conservation easement happening.
Well, it showed the whole map and where we were doing an explanation of the good husbandry and tree husbandry, the nature of the thing, but no, it didn't say anything about that.
Because you weren't aware of the conservation easement right there. Okay, just check.
Right, but usually, in the past, when I do submit it and there was an easement, the town will pick right up. Waterford, Millions, Great Rod Acres, then they fire management. plan. And then I was kind of prepared for that if it were to come, but if not, never, all she said was thanks, and so I said, great. And off we went.
Chris, before you leave the stand, were you there on day one off of Swantown Road?
Yes,
Did you see the blue diamond 2 feet to the
I've
right?
seen that one sign there for 15 years, yeah.
Okay, so did that sign not set off something to say that maybe,
So maybe there's a conservation easement there, but again, I didn't realize it was a preservation easement, and that's kind of why we were so above board with the whole plan as to what we were doing.
okay, but you do acknowledge you saw the diamond that was there. I think what happened was when you came into the land use office, and again, as the attorney of Venus said, we had no planner at the time. And the administrative person that happened to be there at the time, I think you asked her, we're gonna do some cutting on our property. She might have asked, is it is it private property? And you said yes. And she said the town doesn't require.
Well,
Explain
Let
that.
me clarify, Bob. What I did was submit the notification of timber harvest form by the DP, which is all the details of all the parcels and all that we were on, and then a map, a harvest map, and I emailed that all to her, so she had the document. She had something. It wasn't a verbal conversation.
Okay. And
Which is
you-
what I've been doing since 1999 here in North New
and then you said you sent that to her, but you did not get response.
which is not uncommon for the town. There's usually only a response if there's a problem, like when a neighbor calls or something like that and say, oh yeah, I see you here.
Okay, any other questions for Chris Cassidy? Well, he's
Yeah,
here.
Chris, did you appear before the Wetlands Commission?
No,
And you didn't really, obviously they have different jurisdiction than the CE itself. So we deal with them, even Waterford. I know Maureen is dealing as the environmental officer because we represent Waterford.
Sure.
But she's also working also as the wetlands officer.
Right.
So I think if she's looking at CE, she's looking at them as the environmental officer. Because I don't think you had a jurisdictional issue with our wetlands commission here in North Stonington.
I did not have a jurisdiction. issue?
No, because they didn't take, they haven't asked me to take any action.
Never had a problem.
But,
Nor have I ever gone to a commission meeting. It never had me come. It's
Right.
always been.
but I think the conservation easement is a different issue.
Right, but I think it would be handled within that land use office. I mean, it went to Cheryl, who was, we got this timber harvest coming, you know, this is what we're doing. Gray area,
Yeah.
I know. But,
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and I just did want to make one clarifying comment about your comment about, it is a very selective harvest that we're doing out there. Very forest management oriented, third party certified by the USDA. So it's not, let's go in and cut our biggest investment.
But the 20-foot wide cut is what you show all over the property, which is gonna be a
Yeah,
lump.
that was an old skid road that went through there. So as we went in, we cut.
But we don't want skid roads in this conservation use.
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just the
that's-
trail that we.
That's not good. And I think when I try to see the map, which is incredible, I mean, I've been
Now,
at
that
this
must
a
be
while,
just too
but-
small. If you.
Yeah.
If we could blow it up digitally, you can kind
I-
of see what's going on or maybe take the aerial
I-
off.
I
the
mean,
map,
it's-
but-
But what it does show is green dotted skid roads
Right.
over almost the entire acreage, no matter whether it's
Well, they
CE
were
or
there.
not.
Those were existing. Those are
Well,
all existing roads.
I just don't think we want those disturbed.
I can't argue.
But then, as
I
I
get
said
that,
to your
I get
counsel,
that.
but you understand better than he does, I guess, that we still need to know, and Bill Richter's done the best job of anybody, where is the 129 acres of CE? I'm ready to get a surveyor out there. I don't think.
And do you have the ability to?
Here's Bill's, how clear it is. See, there's his map.
But the conservation is in this light blue color. Let's see if we can get it on.
He does a pretty good job.
I have a quick question while we're waiting for him to send that. So it sounds like what we're gonna do is go on out and again, walk with the three of us, with the Conservation Commission, with potentially Mashantucket, to take a look again at the area. What is the condition of of that 20-foot easement? Because something that I cannot get out of my head is literally me walking out of my car, not having any knowledge about anything and being greeted by that diamond on the first tree in the middle of this whole clear cut road. And so that I can't get out of. And then to hear Bill say that at Lake of Isles, where there is a clear diamond off of the 14th fairway, that there's clear cutting behind it. So that I just can't seem to wrap my head around. I don't have any kind of knowledge of any of that, but it was very clear to me, just getting out of my car and being greeted by that. So do we know what the condition, I thought I heard you say that they've done some remediation of that road from Swantown or not, or we're just
No,
waiting for nature to take its course, because that, I know that we went in March, but it was a mess. It
so
was a mess that you could not even walk on. So I want to know what the condition of it is right now.
that's the purpose of the meeting. So
Okay.
they ceased
All
and
right.
desisted at the time.
Okay,
So we know how things grow in the early spring. So what Attorney Veen is saying is to see what has naturally happened on its own before remediation takes place, to see what additional remediation might have to be done.
okay, but I thought that I heard you say, Rob, that one of their proposals was to just let
Yep,
it be.
Absolutely. That's
So-
not my proposal, but that is,
Yeah,
I
so
received.
letting it be, even the last couple of months, it's gotta still be a complete muddy mess. So that's not acceptable to me to leave it like that and just let nature take its course. So I think that it is good that we're gonna go on out there and take a look at what it looks like right now, so that we can come to a compromise about what will be done on that property to make it look better.
Cause it might be a little deceiving too with summer growth, weed growth that fills in, but isn't like a tree.
True, because we went before the spring. Yeah.
Chris, can you do me a favor? Can you take the handheld mic and speak?
But it's impossible to do without being out in the woods.
Completely agree.
So the white hatched area on this is the conservation easement. The red is their boundary. And then how did you do that? Snap that layer off? Or was that? Oh, you didn't do it. But there's a small area, there's a small area under here that we cut most of this area except for around this.
Is there any way you can zoom in to that?
There it is. How'd you do that? Anyway, that's the map with the conservation area. I don't know what more we can discuss. It. This is the 14th fairway or whatever. The signs are facing the fairway, which I've never been to the golf course. I wouldn't know, but it does extend up into the forest a little bit. And then this is the parcel that comes out to Swantown. And underneath, this is the disturbed road to right here. We cut this road in and stopped, and that's this, what everybody's scared
So
of.
that break in the stone wall is right by your
in the
finger,
stone wall was right here.
and the sign was a little bit to
The
the
sign
left.
was right there covered. Yeah.
And how far would you say you cleared or took down some trees?
We did.
'Cause we
opened
walked
this
it, but it's hard to tell. from the
Road
map.
up to right here. And underneath this is a hash area of what we've done, but literally that's it.
And
There's
I
a
think there was
small
a-
area back here, right here that we did, that went out this way. In this area, all told, it was like 23 acres.
Is there a way, Bill, that you can point on that map to that other area that you were talking about? Around the lake that you found some disturbed?
In preparation for that, this is the document that was turned over to Carol. Because you see this is the front here. And back shows the green. All the green areas.
Yeah, that's the same map you're looking at without this overlay on it, the harvest map. Oh, they did this.
We immediately saw entrance in here up to the point that Chris just described, which is where we stopped. And I talked to him on his cell phone, and he said he had permission from the town to do this. I followed up on Monday and found out that it wasn't permission, although he perceived it was, because he had submitted that document to the town. The plan was to continue to timber all of this area. That's on the last page of the document that you see in front of you. And then if you come down, wondering if there were any other intrusions, because they had not mentioned there were any other intrusions, is when Chris Diaz and I took a golf cart and went around the whole property and found not only were our signs placed here, but on the other side of that, it was totally logged. I can't define for you what clear cutting is. I can tell you that there were isolated trees here and there left standing. We did not see activity yet over here. We did see our signs all along the perimeter. They may have been more frequent because we had some difficulty with foliage intrusion, seeing where our signs were, but they were clearly in front of this spot. What I had asked 2 years ago and given them 150 signs is to do that back area, which I had no way of determining where that was located. The town does not have a GIS SQY, what is it called? They do not have a working gizmo
Oh, okay,
that
the
would
GPS.
determine the coordinates. So they were to place that there. And this is also where there are no signs on that back area. They have also done timbering in this area, which is perfectly allowed. It's not in a conservation easement, it's their property. They have the right to do what they wish to. It's only the conservation easement areas that are in concern.
Do we have a total count of how many like larger trees were taken out?
I can't possibly count that. What I can tell you, correcting Mr. Avina's comment that they cease and desist and there was no further activity. After they stopped cutting, all of the trees that were cut were taken out of there, were stockpiled across the road. Our conservation members saw them, and when we went back, the pile was larger, and when we went back again, it was all taken away. There was a hurried attempt to make sure that those that were cut down were processed according to their wish.
I don't know what they ended up taking down, but in the notification of timber harvest, it says 1,000 cords. I don't know what that, if they ever got to that point because there was a cease and desist. I don't know what 990 board feet means, but that was, that and 1,000 cords was what was on the notification.
And in the resolution that, our attorney suggested, was there I saw about soil, but when they use a bulldozer excavator or something to tear through there and make almost a driveway per se. Was that part of your recommendation to fix that and make it look like normal soil again compared to the ridges going through and the edges?
Yeah, I have enough trouble in my garden, but the Conservation Commission has recommended native plantings in those areas of disturbance, which I think includes the access roads.
Okay.
So, Bill's made a good point that they're not looking to put, the trees back as much as put in typical native plantings that can go in the undergrowth.
Right.
To
I
help-
guess my
yeah.
concern was the mounds of dirt on the side from
Yeah,
the,
that would be
from
part
the
of
equipment.
That should be straightened out, I believe, as part of the restoration.
Okay.
But again, we're discussing, different recommendations, but depending on what the board wants to do, we'll need to get an expert in there. We can't rely on their person, and our commission needs help too, because I need somebody to testify in court. So lots of pictures, lots of expert testimony by somebody who went and got a degree in, restoration as to what all these areas could be, what could be done with them. Because they're sensitive about what should and shouldn't be affected. And as the comment was made, when do you drag out the brush or when do you leave the brush for the Eastern bunny or something?
Right.
I mean, that's what we want to know.
And do we have any rights as the town so we can request to view the property? If they say no, what are our,
I was gonna look at that, not as a town, but we only have the rights under the conservation easement. So I was just starting to look at that.
In answer that, in every deed, it is mentioned that the town has the right to go in and monitor all the conservation easements in town. It's our responsibility to go in and monitor it, so you need to be on the property. What we have done is to notify the landowner that we would like to come out. We can walk it with them if they wish, or if they give us permission, we'll do that. What we're doing currently is instead of doing this every single year, which was the recommendations some years back, we have since that time recommended that we do use the Google Earth flyover, see if there's any anomalies. If we do see an anomaly, we get in touch with the landowner and then go out and see what the anomaly is, whether they've cut a road, whether they've done any amount of destruction to the property. And we have not found that in any of the properties to date, except this one.
And you did notice some other cutting around the Lake of Isles side, is that right?
Repeat that?
Did you notice some cutting in the Lake of Isles easement when you guys toured that?
Off of the 14th fairway you were
Right.
talking
Yes.
about.
The big one.
So is there a discussion on remedying that situation, or are we leaving that?
When
Separate.
we did our route all the way around the perimeter of every conservation easement, yes, it's when we saw the cutting on the other side of the stone wall, right where our signs were placed here.
So that would be part of the settlement too, is to fix that area as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I don't think we didn't look at that.
Yeah, you guys
did our
didn't
last-
tour that. This is all one big conservation
Gotcha.
easement that's just not all adjacent to each other.
Okay.
So next steps is that we get permission for notice the landowner that we want to come on out and take a look at the easement. We get the group together, go on out and take a look at the affected areas, preferably before our July 25th meeting, to be able to vote on some type of decision at that July 25th meeting.
Correct.
All right.
Could I ask a couple quick questions? I'm on the Conservation Commission, Steve Colgan. So Chris, when we met with you and Mr. Whipple long ago, we asked you guys to determine the value of the timber harvested. And we wanted that information because we thought, even if you didn't do this willing, knowing you were violating your conservation easement, we didn't think it'd be appropriate for you to profit from doing that. So have you ever determined the value of the timber taken off the property?
No, and I'm really not at liberty to discuss that kind of stuff without a subpoena. I mean, I'm sorry.
So
What I did tell you is that it's not a very good logging job and it was federally funded to make it accurate. But if we did want to do a forensic stump analysis to see what was out there and, figure out what the stuffage was by opening up that front road and putting up a half a load of firewood and a couple saw logs, it was literally like $35 for the stuffage.
So I took some pictures and this was probably a week after Bill went in there, and I think I counted like a couple hundred trees stacked up, and they were nice long trees, and we'll say the average was a foot diameter, so it was more than firewood. Yeah, right at the Swantown Road. So anyway, I thought it was a gentleman's agreement that you would come back with a value.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to do a forensic stump analysis, and I think at this stage of the game, it's kind of, my client's confidential.
Okay, fair enough, but that was our thought that you
If I
should.
stole the wood, I would tell you, and if it comes to that, I can, but.
Right. Anyway, that was part of our recommendation, our thought process going into that. And then I have a question to the attorney Avina. And was the CE violation, was it a breaking of a law or not?
No, it's a civil action. There's a 52 dash, I just forgot it already.
Right.
It's getting too
okay.
hot, but should have my shorts on. But it's an action you can take to restore the property. So I do think you're getting a little far afield when you start talking about what they
Just
profited.
asking a question.
Because it
That's all.
could be considerable, notwithstanding the action of the lumberer. It's really how much is our third-party expert gonna guesstimate is
Right.
needed to restore the area. It could be considerable. That's the first step we have to take, is your recommendation is it be restored with native plants. This board has to determine, right, the tribe's position, the LLC's position, that if you go out there and take a look, whether they further disturbed or not, I'm not going out there. I got enough problems, but if they took more out, did that clear up some of the brush and timber that was down? I don't know. And we don't know 3 months later how it looks right now. So their position, I'm just repeating it because their consul's not here, is that they would rather keep it as is. Our position will have to be, no, our expert at some point says, this is all the stuff you should be doing, and this is what you should spend to do it. Much like a zoning or a wetlands cleanup, I'm sure you know, when, you got to fix a wetlands, it's not cheap.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I know how to use Google. So I looked at a bunch of case law of CE.
Oh, good.
CE violations, right? And, you know, what I found to be kind of the general theme is, you notify the landowner, they stop it, they fix it, and then there's some kind of, you know, penalty associated with it. Not, is that wrong or not?
Yeah, I didn't find that. If they have it very specific is what I spelled out tonight for a half hour. I mean, you get your costs back. So if we have, you know, 1,500 legal fees, then they're supposed to pay that. If we paid for an expert to go out and study the area and make a recommendation, they pay for that. So there's a whole list of things that they need to pay for. The only time it gets into the penalty phase is 5 times the remediation cost. If somebody with intent or foresight went onto a property, usually an abutting property. I didn't find a case where they were, you know, I have to look for more where the landowner themselves was penalized for violating their own CE, which is what we have here. Usually you're violating another one that you're near. So we have, and I have plenty of legal stuff on taking litigation step. But as you say, as I've done with all the different violations we have in town, whether it be zoning or wetlands, you normally try to work it out. This one attorney here is looking for some, you know, $100,000 in legal fees for what they spent over 5 years trying to enforce a conservation easement. So we don't have that. I don't know if that's, I'd have to check, but I don't think that's in my budget. So you have to advance that fund in order to push too hard. So we're trying to get the best result for what we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more comment before we table this to our next meeting on the 25th? And Attorney Avina, you'll let us know when that meeting's going to take place. And Mr. Ricca, if you're not there, I'm sure some of your Conservation Commission members will be there. So thank you. In the woods. Thank you. Okay, with no more comment on that, let's go to number 8, which is transfer station update.
Actually, I think we have Sustainability Committee
They
presentation.
have not, they've
Sorry.
postponed their presentation to the 25th.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, transfer station. So as we all know, we instituted some new, oh, sorry, Bill.
May I please indulge the selectmen to deal with a item of the lake? There's several folks here that have been waiting through our ad nauseum deliberations and may have other issues. Can you jump your agenda?
So what you're asking us is to take number 10 and moving it up to number 7.
Would that be possible for these folks who are?
Sure. I think if the Board of Selectmen have,
Yeah.
if that's
I'll
okay
make-
with them.
We make a motion?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjust the agenda and take number 10, Lake Drawdown discussion, and move it up to number 8. And then we'll put transfer station. You want transfer station after
We'll
as
just
9?
Move this up to 7 since 7 got taken out anyway.
So 10 to 7.
I'll
Perfect.
second.
Okay, any other comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so in your packet, you have a letter from the Wyosip Lake Homeowners Association, the Lake Association. And what they're asking is to do a drawdown starting no later than November 1st. That would happen during the late fall and early winter. And if you read that letter, you see what they want to do is to use that drawdown to do some corrective work on the lake, work with mitigation of weeds and so on, growth on the lake, and just do a general cleanup. So sometimes when people are visiting the lake, they throw things in the water and gives the homeowners a chance to fix docks and things like that. Would not happen during the summer months when people are using boating and fishing and so on. So they're asking the Board of Selectmen if it's okay if they begin the process by notifying DEP, ask for their approval to draw down Wyosip Lake beginning this fall. And that's where I would like to open discussion.
So who actually does the drawdown? Who operates the valves?
I
The state does. So there's no cost to the town Right.
None other than what's in our budget already for weed mitigation.
Right, and that's mostly for the chemicals, correct?
Yes, that's just the chemicals, yep.
So-
I just want to clarify, because it does say, that with the new valve and dam system, that drawing down the lake is a fraction of the cost incurred with previous drawdowns. So again, just want to clarify where that cost
Can
is.
you,
Does it sit with the association?
let's ask the president, and then we have the incoming president, maybe.
Now, in the past, the old dam, which was pretty much non-existent as far as, being able to, draw it down, being able to, had to do with lead force. Was when they were drawing it down because the valve wouldn't open up. They had to send a diaper up to the end of the pipe, unscrew the cap that was in it, and then control the water flow through reboard. That's just a series of boards you take out the levels of water that runs down to the next level. That's the way they used to do it. But back about 12 years ago, the state, along with Selectmen, Nick Mullane, and President John Gillette, spent years, battling with the state to get a new dam in here. The dam that they put in was state of the art, about $1.3 million. Put that dam in, and it's got a completely automated valve system. So it's a matter of going up now, unlocking the doors, opening it up, and turning a couple of switches. That's what it does, and it just brings the lake down. So they can do it very easily with minimum amount of cost. In the past, and I think it's still probably the situation, and they'll let you know once they apply the letter. They pulled a fee, to draw it down. We would have to pay, for us. In the past, the town has kicked money in for it. The thing is that a lot of times the state doesn't do that. Do the job. That's it. The new dam is much more efficient. Very little labor.
Talk about why you do 3 feet.
That's kind of what the state always recommend. They don't like to do any more than 3 feet. So that's what we requested. To do the kind of cleanup that we want to do, that's what we need. We can get around the perimeter of the lake, clean all the stuff up. A lot of times there's trees that fall into the lake. Clean up like that. They're off the way by accident. Clean up.
And who does that cleanup? The Lake Association?
State that. In fact, the last time that the boat launch was ever redone, Nick Mullane did that. Now, traded off some services to the state because it was nothing but a bunch of potholes to the thing. Yeah, highway to the law. And something probably will request now, the boat launch itself, right? A lot of these bass boats have been with big end, none of them have winches to pull them up. So what they do is they drive the boat up on the trailers. And what they do is they dig a big trench. So there's a big mound of gravel up there, it's right by the boat. If we get the lake going down, that's effective from the whole. Pretty much everything is done up there. The association does.
So then the water, sorry. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, so the water replaces by spring, that
Yeah.
back to the original level.
They'll close it down in enough time it's spring fed and plus whatever they get the rain run off and that kind of stuff to pull it back. Never had a problem. They do years. Last time we drew it down was 2016, 2017. Prior to that, they took it down to replace the dam. That went down 8 feet. It came down. It's a while, but it came down.
Any other questions? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve moving forward with the, lake drawdown.
Great.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, just want to clarify. So we're just voting to have the Lake Association notify DEP to start the process.
We requested the board of selectmen Board of Selectmen has to write a letter to the DEP requesting.
Okay, I misread that.
You know, I actually did too. so
Yeah,
I might have to write
okay.
a letter, so. But I guess the question is to allow us the process to begin, which looks like I will be writing a letter to Deep asking for permission to do this. So is that your intent to
Yeah,
vote?
so moved.
Okay.
Okay, I'll still second.
Okay, then let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Just a side note, at our June 25th meeting, we had 35 people attend. And we took a vote on this, and it was, all but one person voted to move it along. And the reason this one person voted against it, is because the state in the past has, on these drawdowns, they wait too long to do it. And what happens is that all your previous life up there, the turtles and the frogs and everything else, they hibernate, you know, they mud in, whatever they do. And what happened in the past is the state went in too late after we get a frost or freeze, and they start growing it down. Meantime, all these animals are plug in for the winter, and there's a chance that we can lose it. We did lose a lot of bullfrogs. Not that it's a concern for a lot of people, but it's nice to listen to.
what date would you like the letter
Yeah.
completed by?
It's actually the letter to going to the DEP should be in, should have been in first of July. I know they accepted it for the time. It should go in soon.
So
They'll come back, if they approve it, they'll come back with a response, and they normally will say, we'll start drug out.
So if that drawdown is too late, is there a date that you say, no, we don't want to draw them down?
Well, you guys, you know, in the past, the last drawdown we did, it started after the. And we can still do maintenance with that. So, but there's always a chance. So you can, frog can freeze, and still live, right? They have their own systems. They fill their body at 3/4 full of water. They create, they come up with coming from the liver piece of the, so frog can freeze, and they will still come back to life, but if it's down for a long, long period of time, so that's why we want to get it done before we get it. Before we get frost, freeze. Save the end.
You have contact information on who the letter should be addressed to, what department, what person?
I'm not sure, I probably couldn't give you a name of this. I've got some letters.
Do you have a previous letter that was written that you have a copy of?
Got a previous response from the state. Okay, that I gave you a
If you
copy
can
of.
drop that by, that'd be good. I could start crafting the letter, but just to make sure it goes to the right place, so it doesn't go and sit in somebody's desk and then,
I could-
okay. So any help you can give me on that,
Yep.
as far as contact information, that'd be good.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I love that you guys are good stewards of the lake, and I love that you know that much about the frogs. I love it. Thank you for being good stewards of our lakes.
Okay. With that said, let's move on to number 8. Transfer station update. Okay, as we know, we've put in a transfer station sticker fee and bulky waste fee starting July 1st. We've sold somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm going to guess, between 600 and 650 transfer station stickers to date. And I'm happy to say, and I think you both have experienced firsthand on Saturday, that about 95% of the response to selling the transfer station stickers has been positive, which has been great. I think we sold 84 on Saturday, and I have to say 80 were pleasant comments and saying it was something we probably needed to do years ago, and thank you for doing it. They also wanted to make sure there's going to be compliance and enforcement, which we assured them there would be. And there was 4 people I counted that maybe were somewhat of a negative vibe. That's 0.5%. So I'm okay with that. Anyway, the biggest problem we've had so far, and I typically don't like to refer too much to social media because, you know, that sometimes there's a small number of people making a lot of noise, but you have to listen to everything. And the biggest problem we've had is on bulky waste. And it's probably because there's a lot of variables in bulky waste. two people look at something or three people look at something and they see different sizes, different how big that load is. And it's been new and we've been working through the process. I actually had a gentleman today who used to work for Groton landfill that came in and spent a half hour with me telling me all the reasons why we should never put in the scales. Oh, go figure. So we thought that might be the cure of everything down the road. But in the meantime, we did notice when we worked up there on Saturday that there's a lot less bulky waste, and that could have been attributed to some of the negative comments that were on social media. People saying, well, now that they're charging, I'm not going to bring my stuff there anymore. That could be some of the reason. But I think that we haven't done as good a job of training as we might have hoped we would have done, and doing a little bit more research. I know Brett had mentioned a while back, why can't we have pictures of trucks showing different sizes of trucks and what different loads look like? Our assistant foreman, Alan Ladd, took it upon himself to send me these pictures of 4 trucks that he used other towns to give him examples of what we're talking about for trucks. And we'll take the first one, small truck. Truck examples, Chevy S10, Ford Ranger, etc. He's giving you a potential bed size, width and length and height. And what he's saying is that what he's finding is that a small truck that's half full is small truck that's full to the top is a small load. If it's over the top, it would move up to a medium load. If you look at the second truck, which is a little bit bigger truck, which is a Ram 1500 or a Ford F-150, he's saying that truck is full, it's a medium load. If it's only half full, it's a small load. And if it's over full, it's a large load. So by using the truck size, it gives us a better idea of what we're looking at as far as loads. And by having the same person doing it constantly as he's looking at it, he's going to kind of set in his way what a small, medium, large, and extra large load is. I think something like this helps an awful lot in determining what we want to look at. I think that I did talk to him about the possibility of suspending transfer station fees from now until August 2nd, so we could do more evaluation and more research and more training. He felt that would open up a Pandora's box and cause quite a bit of negative reaction, especially by those people who may have already paid. He said it would kind of bring back the bad memories of the people that paid $60 back in 2010 or 2008, whenever it was. And then here we go again. We paid it, and now they're gonna take it away. Some people wouldn't understand the difference between a suspension and a elimination. And he said that I think we're better off to continue. He says it's already seen it getting better. I think with additional training in a sheet like this, that maybe we can put something like this on our website. We'd start cleaning things up, and he had hoped that we could move forward as we're going and get better at it versus suspending it and have to deal with the immediate negativity that would bring with the suspension of even 2 to 3 weeks. I can't say I disagree with him, although I was totally in favor of maybe doing a suspension, but it's just my opinion. I know Brett has also done some research in multiple towns, which I asked him to do, and he's looked at, and I'd like you, if it's okay with you, Brett, to take over at this point. Talk about some of the things you found in some other towns.
So what I did find, so in your packet that I just put there were a few towns that do have scales, but the majority of ones that I did find don't have scales. But they do list them by truck size or by cubic yards based on what they are. If you go through the list, the price wise, we're really in the same ballpark as most other towns. A few caveats to some of this is there are certain towns that allow a certain amount of truckloads per resident per year. I think the first one, they allow 7 times you can come in with some bulky waste on a smaller truck with no fee. A lot of the towns don't allow commercial waste in there, commercial debris. at all, so they require you to get a dumpster if you're doing, if it's a commercial contractor. The other thing is that we might want to talk about is the requirement of a building permit. There are probably 3 towns that do require that on major projects, so a lot of material, from one person does require a building permit, but a lot of the majority of towns don't require that if it's a residential resident bringing it in. So in here, the Old Saybrook has probably the most detailed based on sizes. And that's page 3. So that talks about a pickup van, small van, or car trailer, bulky load waste. And then it goes up to 1 to 2 cubic yards. That's your next size. So they have the most detailed based on their sizes.
One thing I noticed though, they're charging for brush, which we don't charge for brush.
Correct. So
That's one thing. Then I also noticed the definition of bulky waste. Bulky waste materials include items such as carpet, building and demolition materials, i.e. sheetrock, insulation, plywood, shingles, doors, windows, vinyl siding, concrete, brick, stone, etc., which is basically what you would find in new construction. Go ahead, I'll let you finish before I add any more.
okay. What I do see in all towns is, I won't say all, there might be one that I missed from what I printed, but they also put this addendum that the transfer station attendees are authorized to decrease fees for partial loads or to waive for insignificant quantities that are being delivered in a resident's private automobile. So that's, there are some towns that have it, if you have a trunk full, there's a charge for that with a $5 minimum, but most of the towns, if you have that amount in a trunk of your vehicle, they don't seem to charge. And then what I did like about Old Saybrook, and this would be a separate maybe discussion later on, is they have a transfer station permit. And what that form is, it's Old Saybrook residents who hire building contractors that will be using transfer station to drop off demo or brush. They fill out this application at the first selectman's office. So it tells them the type of work, description of waste, and when they plan to start and when they plan to finish. So that's for, when I looked it up, if you hire someone to clean your basement out or take down a dog fence, and say you're an older person and you hire someone to do that, they can go fill this permit out and get that so they can dump it in town because they are a resident, even though they hired someone else to do the work. But all of the ones that I've seen do require for residents to have a sticker on top of the bulky waste. So you can't just come in and dump bulky waste. And I think we're doing that here.
I don't think that permit idea is a bad idea. I think one thing that would ensure that the material's coming from North Stonington. So that's something we can talk about, is maybe an addendum down the road, but I think we're going to talk a little bit more about it. I don't think that's a bad idea to say, yes, it's coming from North Stonington, because ultimately that's the bottom line, right? Is to keep the out of town materials from coming into North Stonington. If a builder's building in Westerly and he didn't get a dumpster because he knows he can dump it in our transfer station for free, then why pay for a dumpster? Just put it in his truck and drive it over and dump it off for free. So I think that we're already a little bit ahead of the game by asking people, where did this waste come from? And if it's old wood, the conversation I had with the highway garage on Saturday was, if it's old wood, like an old deck, if it's something you've pulled apart, a toilet, something you're replacing, that should just ask, where did this come from? If they say North Stonington, I would just believe them and say, fine, it's bulky waste. If it's something small, put it in the dumpster and we're not going to charge you. Like you said, Brett, a trunk load of a sedan or SUV, that's not a big pile. So that could be put in the dumpster and should be for free. But if they're bringing it into it in a truck, and it looks like new construction material, as I just read, like the drywall and the studs and the plywood, that's coming from new construction. Ask where that's coming from. And if they say North Stonington, then it says, can I see your permit? Do you have a permit? If they say, I don't have it with me, but I do have one, possibly maybe let them dump that day for a fee, but then double check and make sure there is a permit pulled on that property. If there's people doing work without permits, then that's a whole different issue. But the idea is to keep the bulky waste from North Stonington in North Stonington. It's not taking it from Westerly Groton and Preston and bringing it to North Stonington. I guess that's my thought, but Nicole, you look like you're ready to say something.
I just wanted one more tidbit to, the majority of towns that I see, and this might be a future discussion with the highway department, is when it is asphalt shingles, there's a significant increase in the fees charged because of how they break down and fill up your bulky waste pile, especially on like roofing jobs and stuff like that. And then there was just one more.
And that might
tidbit.
be because are the oil base, is that why? 'Cause
It might be. I don't have the info on that one. Oh, the specifics. There's one more thing I wanted. Another thing for future discussion is I see a lot of the towns shifting, and it might be beneficial to Susan and Christine for accounting purposes, that they've shifted to personal check or credit cards for these fees as they grow. So there's not that cash flow that you have to worry about at the transfer station. So that's maybe a down the line discussion after we get through these stickers and the initial bulky fee, but it cuts down on the amount of cash that we have to worry about up at the transfer station.
Understood.
I am in agreement that suspending it may cause more problems. So I agree with that. I don't know how I feel about just asking the person that you come on the property, that truck should have already had a sticker on it because we're requiring that. And did that come from North Stonington? I mean, what do we expect people to say? If they say no, we're going to
Tell them
have
they
them
can't
turn
dump.
around and they can't dump. I think that that was just kind of like a comment. I do like the explanation with pictures so that we can have something laminated right there for Charles or whoever's going to be doing this and say, when somebody questions, well, why do you think this is a small load? Well, here's my guidelines and this is what I'm going by. So I absolutely think that we should have something to reference, not just advertising it, but something to reference for them to pull out and be able to, in the moment, explain why they're asking. I mean, I overheard Donnie right then and there on Saturday. Somebody said, geez, I only have a couple of pieces of wood in the back of my truck. And no, Donnie was not going to charge him $25. So it did just go in the dumpster. But I agree with no suspension and instead giving them clear pictures and descriptions to use up there.
Do you feel that we can also, because it's a work in progress, right? I think we need to look at some of the things you brought up, Rep, possibly that special permit that might help out with, a job came from our town. So that's good. Maybe we could even extend it, not just basement cleanouts, but additions and maybe a demo of an old garage. or
Right,
whatever.
that's how it is in the old Saybrook. It's for.
So maybe
demo.
that's something we can, down the road, I can have Jim or somebody put on the website as something new. As we keep trying to improve the process as we go. I think this is just already improved quite a bit just in the discussions in the last 2 weeks, and that this newest, I agreed to, let's have it laminated, have it up there, have it posted, have it also go on the website. Trying to do our best. We're listening to what the feedback is, which I think is our job, and we're reacting to what we're hearing.
Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of there's always going to be pushback of new fees and things like that, but I think a lot of it was that we didn't have a basis or guidelines for people to say, just because we said a small truck, what's that really mean? And then that permit part about the, for bulky waste is really for in-town businesses that are still doing business. So just because you have a business in town doesn't mean you could dispose of everything that you get, right? So I think that's a way of in-town businesses say, well, I'm doing work in North Stonington, and this is the property owner I'm doing it for. They sign off on it. It's good. The only comment I have regarding what Alan put, which I do like, is, so if you look at the medium truck. Right, so that's a 6-foot bed. If they have an 8-foot bed, what are we saying?
Oh, the medium truck's actually an 8-foot bed.
No, 70,
Oh, he said
72
72?
by 60.
That's
So
fine.
it's the same as the small truck, except the width is different.
I think that might be a typo because he took a picture. That truck is an 8-foot bed that we're looking at.
Okay, so if that's the case, then
That might just be a typo.
I just want us to have those guidelines in there. So if it's 8 foot, what do we do? Or an 8 foot actually would be a large truck.
I was gonna say the measurement for the bed size on the.
Yeah, the
lot
large
is
truck
8.
is 8-foot bed. So I guess if it's a 6-foot bed, it's considered a medium truck. If it's an 8-foot bed, it's considered a large truck. I do think, I mean, I don't know what, we can do the math, but it seems like a big jump for the extra 2 feet from 35 to 75, but that's just my,
And I think that's only mimicking what Preston and some
Yeah,
other
it is in
towns are
line
doing.
with what others are doing, though.
so I have the Preston cubic foot on the last page of, well,
How are you gonna know cubic feet if we didn't know 990 board feet? Which I did know, by the way, Nicole. Nine,
so they call a $75 is a small dump truck.
and that looks like a small dump truck in the picture, doesn't it?
Right, but if it's an 8-foot bed in a regular pickup truck,
Right.
that's,
Yeah, so I would, we can look at those dimensions. I think maybe we can clean those dimensions up because I can't think that on the dump truck, the sides would be 20 inches high if they're 20 inches high
right.
on the residential truck.
And then if you look at Preston too, so we did our regular bulk on Preston, but if you look at, they have a heavier bulk shingles sheetrock, so we might wanna look at that at some point. Because like I said, 99% of the towns list that separately, and I don't, if we can, maybe Donnie would be able to find out the reasoning for it. I'm just thinking it's much heavier material.
Alan can comment on the shingles. He asked.
Oh, he's online?
Yeah, so Alan, go ahead.
Am I gonna pay for this comment? Is he like?
No. Can you hear me?
You're not punching in
we
before
can
you
hear
make
you.
this, are you?
No, I'm not gonna charge you for this one. So Preston pays to get rid of their hazardous or bulky waste, sorry. So the shingles, they just weigh more. They don't take up the yardage, but they actually physically weigh more. That's why they would charge more because they get cost in the long run.
All right, so they're paying for tonnage out.
Yes, so they take a 30-yard dumpster. I mean, you could fit a good size, a huge roof in a 30-yard dumpster. Honestly, the truck wouldn't be able to hold a 30-yard dumpster full of shingles, could be overweight. So that's why they charge more. Only in the long run, they have to pay for it.
Okay, Alan, while you're here, so if you had a 1500, but it had
Yep.
an 8-foot bed, what are you considering that in your idea?
So it really depends on how full it was. That's why we had the discussion about if a medium-sized bed was half full, it would be a small load. If it was full, it would be a large load. I mean, if we had a mason dump load, a mason dump load has very short sides. They come with pockets on them to get your height to get more material in. That's why we kind of went with the mason. We took a picture of our mason dump and a picture of a pickup. We kind of took one. I went off the yardage from Preston. Montville, sorry, doesn't have a whole lot of description on yards, besides the sheetrock and the asphalt shingles. So we were kind of sorry about that. Kind of using a couple different options to figure out what the sizes were. It's hard to say. I mean, if you have an 8-foot bed and it's just below the sides, we're going to call it a medium. But if it's down below the wheel wells, I mean, I would call it a small because you're not even halfway full at that point. So that's why it would be a small. It's really, I mean, in Preston's, if you look online on their transfer station, it's really up to the attendant to decide if the bed's full up to the bed rails, if it's heaping, or if it's well below the sides. And we've been going over that the last couple of weeks with seeing a couple loads come in and seeing how we're gonna play that game. It's up to the attendant to really see how big of a load it is.
Okay, so like and also like a mason dump, if they have the wood rails on the side increasing the size of that mason dump, then that would be.
Exactly. I mean, if they have wood rails as high as the cab on the truck, because they usually have a protective over the cab because they're hauling with like machinery, putting dirt in and stuff, you would have more material because you have bigger sideboards. It's hard to decipher. That's why it's up to the attendant to decide if you have 4-foot sideboards, rather you have 6-inch sideboards. Um, if it's a small, medium, or large, you'd have to go with your cubic yardage. I mean, either mason dump bodies can be 10, 12 foot long to 8 foot long. You got to see it to know. That's why we also gave the measurements to try to figure out your yardage as well.
Okay.
I agree this, that with the pictures and with some description gives us a good starting point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of options in different size bodies. I mean, you have the 6 and the 8-foot bed, and then you have like Bob's truck in the first picture is is a little bit smaller bed because it's narrower, the same depth, but it's narrower and same 6 foot long.
Okay, so I think as a board, we're not trying to hurt anyone. We're not trying to make extra money on somebody. We're just trying to do what's fair for the town to keep our bulky waste pile last longer than it has and make sure we're protecting the transfer station for our residents and not for out of towners. I think that's the philosophy we've come up with, why we're doing this in the first place. And again, on the stickers, most people are okay with them. So I think that, it's up to you, but I'm okay with moving forward with this additional information and see if we can get some of this stuff laminated tomorrow and get it up to the transfer station and maybe have a meeting with, I'll be glad to meet up with Edward Charles and kind of give him what we spoke about tonight. So,
I agree.
In small trailers, you would classify by the size of the trailer, I take it.
you know what, I guess if you do a lot of it, if it's one guy doing it all the time, no matter what container it came in, he'd know what size the load is. So, I think I already told them to err on the side of the customer. So if let's not argue, if there's a question whether it's a large or a medium and the customer thinks it's a medium and you think it's a large, it's a medium. So,
So I
Brian, go ahead.
like a little more guidance too for what we're gonna do regarding the building permits. And how much is acceptable before a building permit? Because as you walk up to the transfer station, it says bulky waste building permits required. So if that's our steadfast rule,
So
Or-
let's run over that one more time. So let me know if you disagree with what I spoke to Donnie about is old material, old dirty, old lumber, stuff that's been around that a deck you've taken down, you've demoed something, an old doghouse, an old shed. You typically don't get a permit to take that down. So I'm saying if you just ask where it's coming from, they say it's from North Stonington, I would say that you're gonna believe them. Whether you think they're telling the truth, you're gonna go take it at their word. We're still already ahead of the game by doing this process. If they have new construction material, you can know sheetrock when you see it and plywood and studs and roof shingles and sidewall, there's an addition going on or there's a house being built, you can tell new construction material. I think they should have a building permit. Still ask where it came from and it should have a building permit in our town. If they don't, then like I said, there's another problem. They should have pulled a building.
no, I agree 100%. I think we should have some kind of language that states that, so people understand it. So when they see the building permit required for bulky waste, they don't turn around as they're driving up and say, oh, I don't have a building permit. I just built a chicken coop and this is what I have.
So maybe just add the words new construction, building permit needed for new construction materials, something like that.
I just think some kind of wording so people understand that if they don't have a building permit and it is something smaller, I mean, we can say it all we want, but when you see a sign that says building permit required for bulky waste,
Is Alan still on? Right, don't answer. I just want to know if you're listening, that's all.
I have a quick question too. If I approach and let's say I have a large truckload, according to the picture and the size, and I don't have a building permit, am I allowed to still pay the $75 and dump it? Like, how often are we
What's
gonna?
in the truck?
Well, that's what I mean. It clearly looks like, I'm saying that it clearly looks like new building demolition stuff, but I don't have my permit with me.
So this is what I would do. So we don't have an issue, to answer your question. I would say, where did it come from? If they say North Stonington, what's the address? They give you an address. Okay, you don't have the permit, which you can dump today, but then I would have at the transfer station attendant, keep that address written down and check with the land use office if there is truly a building permit.
Okay, that's,
on
I
that
just wanted to
property.
know what our
If
process
they come back a
was.
second time and you say there's no permit, we checked, you can't dump it.
Okay. Okay, I just
But I
wanted.
would,
to-
Can
I would.
Can
let
I
the-
answer on that one real quick?
Okay, this is not gonna be on overtime,
So-
right?
No, I did not clock in. So it's actually online. You can see what building permits in town are open. We actually looked at it with Jim today and yesterday, and I ended up showing Charles and Willie over the break that you can log right in at our computer we clock in at the transfer station. If the people give you either their last name or the address, you can check and see. I mean, if they came in with 4 loads, we might make a phone call to town hall and say, hey, these people brought in 4, 5, 6 loads of brand new material of cut pieces. We might want to look into see what they're building because they don't have a permit. Other than that, everybody in town's permit is online on the town page and you can see what's open.
So Alan, if they
Very
don't have
good.
a permit and they have a truckload of new building materials, right?
Yep.
There's no proof and you can't find a permit online. Are you saying to them that they have to take it away? Or are you saying you can dump today, but you can't come back without a permit?
Nope, I would tell them, honestly, in my opinion, I would tell them they can dump because they're still paying for it. And if they come in with a second or third load and they say they're only building a chicken coop, I would say that's a pretty big chicken coop. And I would probably notify somebody in the building side and let them know, hey, I mean, they've brought in 3, 4, 5 loads of new material that's all cut up. You might want to look into why there isn't a permit pulled.
Okay. We know there's always people that are gonna try to beat the system and then there's people that are honest. So I think we just do the best we can at this point and try to get better at it as we go.
Have we had people actually produce building permits?
Alan?
Have we had-
I haven't seen one yet. The couple loads that I did see was an old hot tub, a couple old garden beds. She said it was from. I mean, and it was a couple of 2x6s that were half rotted. They've been under dirt for a while, and she only came with 1 load in the last couple weeks. So I haven't seen any new material come in or a lot of shingles in 1 load. To think that they're replacing a roof or building a new addition or anything like that. I mean, most people that are doing that, they create so much material that they're going to get a dumpster because it's easier for them. I mean, who wants to haul 15 loads of the dump to get rid of everything in a small truck?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Alan, another question for you, sorry. So if you look at Vernon here, they say vehicles with trailers will be charged a vehicle charge. If the vehicle is full and there's a trailer charge as well. We're gonna be doing that, correct? So if it's the full truck and a full trailer behind it, we're charging for each unit?
I mean, yeah, I would look at the size of the truck and the size of the trailer and determine what size load it would be depending on what we went off with cubic yards and just the material in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely charge for both.
So that could be, say, a medium truck, but a large trailer, correct?
Exactly. So then you're going to charge for a very big load, the big load, because they have that much material.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just if we want to put, which a lot of these towns have, and I think Old Saybrook says it best, is the transfer station attendants are authorized to decrease fees for partial loads or waive fees for insignificant quantities that are being delivered in a resident's private automobile.
Well, it
That-
does. Go ahead.
That's actually on the bottom of that packet with the pictures.
Well, he says the attendant will determine the size of odd loads, but it doesn't
Yep.
say that they have the to waive certain fees for insignificant quantities.
No, I think that wording is vague enough that it allows them to go up or down on it. An odd load meaning it doesn't fit the exact, small truck. They can, and it's piled up over, that would be an odd load, so it gives them the right to go above the 25. You don't think that wording is
Does it give them
clear?
do we have anything under the 25?
No, I don't think we should. I don't think we should. So So if your guy goes, well, just give me $10 and you're good, I don't think I want that
So if
happening.
it's a half load, half of a small truck, we're charging a full-size load?
Half
Yes.
of a small truck, we're charging for a smaller, which is $25. If it's like 15 boards or less, or 10 boards or less, it goes in the dumpster, which is just about what we're talking about. If they can put it in the dumpster, then we're not charging for it, correct?
I don't know,
think
I-
we,
I'm
I don't,
asking.
yeah, I don't think we can take a small truck and divide it into increments of a quarter full, half full, 3/4, and then overflowing. I think. I mean, we gotta cut it off at some point.
And do you agree, we don't want someone saying, just give me $10 and you're good, right?
No, because I
that's-
think that opens us up for, why does he get to pay only 10, but I had to pay the full
Exactly right.
25? And again, I think that as residents get used to what we're doing, I think as the staff get used to eyeballing loads, I think we're gonna be better. It'll be more consistent. How do you cut that off? How do you then say half of a small load
Well, the
is
reason-
$15?
The reason I ask is if Bob goes up there with his truck and he's got a half a load in his truck or a quarter load, that's about the same size as somebody's trunk. But yet will say that if you have a trunk full, there won't be a charge. So should he be penalized because he drives a truck compared to?
No, but I think we need to rely on the attendant's common sense. Secondly, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do, is I only have a quarter of a truck. I'm gonna wait till I have a full truck and go over that, because I'm gonna get charged $25 either way. Or I'm gonna go up there 3 times, I'll take 5 boards each time I go up to get rid of trash and dump off the 5 boards in the dumpster, not be charged anything. So I already figured out how I'm gonna handle this.
Bob figured out how he's gonna beat the system.
It's not beating the system. It's doing it's making sense of the system. Exactly right.
Yeah, I think we have to start somewhere and then we study and adjust. We're already talking about tweaking the bulky waste situation based on feedback that we've heard and read. I think that we continue to study and adjust, and as things come up, we'd love to hear from the highway crew and the transfer station crew on themes that they're hearing so that we can continue to study and adjust.
Yeah, is there Brian, did you want to make a comment? I'm sorry. Can you go up there? And Tim and John, what do you want me to move up in the agenda for you guys? Huh? Is this on this? Oh, perfect.
And I said to myself, sweet Jesus, we need to move that up for them to sit through.
Go ahead, Brian.
Right, is the brush still free?
Yes. And I think we described brush as 3-inch diameter and less. Yes.
Bulky waste dumpster's still there by the sound, right? So like you say, if I bring up one chair in the truck, I can throw it in.
Correct. We're not moving the dumpster out of there. It's staying there.
The other thing I was gonna say, it might help, I'm not sure, to make a suggestion. You get a copy of the truck sizes that you have. And then maybe even a copy of, I know they used to have what's recyclable, because I think that might be an avenue where people are gonna stop messing that up. You gave them 2 pieces of paper together with a short explanation, needs help. When people buy a sticker, you give them 2 things, and that'll quiet a lot of them down. They'll have the answers right in front.
I think that's a great idea. I can start doing that as early as tomorrow. And
Even
I
if
love
you
that
have 'em for
idea.
Saturday, if you
oh,
have
and I-
copies, we hand 'em out.
we sell them yes, we could hand them out at the town hall when we're selling the vouchers now, and then bring some up with us on Saturday and leave them there at the transfer station.
Yeah,
That's
we
a
can
good,
help.
I don't think that's.
I
a bad
agree.
idea.
Trying hard here.
I know you are. I know. I see your comments. Thank you so much, Brian.
I'm a proponent of what you mentioned, where another town is implementing 5 loads, 7 loads, bring beer. I'm not sure why we don't.
It's intriguing. I think that the tracking of it is yet, think we're putting a lot already on the workers that are up there, but it's,
Well,
I don't know if I agree with 5 to 7.
well, plus I think Brett said he found one town, right? One town that did that.
No, there's a few towns that do a
Can
certain
you tell me
amount.
who they are?
Yeah,
I'm not opposed.
but so some towns have a punch card. So that first one I gave you, they'll have a punch card that you get when you get your sticker. So you have to pay for your normal sticker, but you have a punch card of whatever you decide on. And they punch it each time you dump bulky waste. And after that's done, you're paying for anything over that.
Okay, so we could, since we can't, we've already started collecting fees. So if we did it from the beginning now, we'd have to give refunds for the people who already brought stuff. What we could do is talk about instituting a punch card for during the year. Maybe it's a 5-load punch card. Come up with what the criteria is, why we would give it out. And then someone who's been paying bulky waste fees for 3 months takes his 5-load punch card and he gets 5 loads free after that. We just can't start from the beginning because then all those people that already paid, we want them.
Or we'd have to implement it next year maybe.
But
you know.
it's just,
That's a good idea.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We are one of 2 bulky waste facilities in the state. Everyone else is taking the trash in and then sending it somewhere else. Ours is coming in and staying here. So
Right.
the point of this is to extend the life of our bulky waste pile. So if
Sure.
we're letting people continue to bring in and not necessarily think about what should be coming and not coming, that kind of takes away that benefit.
the big I mean, so I'm speaking purely as a resident, right? So we have an old house that we're constantly renovating and we're constantly going to the dump for various things. But our impact is small compared to what your main concern is those folks that are contractors. Now, I think that they should have an entirely different system. And I don't know if that has been looked at, but I think for as a resident, that there should be an accommodation made for people that are having old homes, which a lot of us do in North Stonington, and, foregoing a fee for every load. Personally, I mean, honestly, and I won't even go into the fact that I have no kids in the school system, and I feel like, I'm paying for a school system where everybody's going to school. So how about this? Families that have no kids in the school system get a 5 sticker, a 5 limit.
Sure, that would be easy to control.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, something.
But I think these are good ideas and I think there's ways we can enhance the system over time. And I think we're gonna hear about ideas like this one. So I'm not so much the one with the no kids in school thing, but Tim?
Tim Choke is 6 Rampdale Road. This is educational tonight, and I appreciate all the thought you guys putting into this. The only comment I had was, I think you're 100% right about education. People who are going to be charging should have some education, some training. Because when I went there about a week ago, I basically got I had the Tundra 6-foot bed. And I had maybe a little less, right in the boundary of a quarter of a load. And so one person at the tent said, just put it in a dumpster. As I was going back into my truck, another person said, well, what'd you let him do that for? And then another person, three opinions on the same truck. So I think the education part is.
We're gonna narrow that down to the same person unless he's having on a break or a lunch, but the same person can be doing all that.
Sure.
So I agree with you, and I think that's one of the
A lot of the
one of the things
feedback
we've
we heard,
heard
yeah.
was, right, there's too many variables, there's too
Right,
many
that's-
too much
that's-
guesswork, so.
Very, like you said.
I think we're gonna have a good system eventually, it's just a matter of working into it.
There will be some growing pains. that's
Yeah.
for sure.
And that's why I think it's important to continue to get feedback from the people that are up there doing it all the time so that we can kind of talk about and hear and make decisions
Right. And
possibly different. Just my comments on the 5 to 7. I don't know how I feel about 5 to 7 because everybody knows that the fear of what that closing of that bulky waste pile is going to cost us in however many years frightens me. But I don't know if we have an opportunity in 2 years when we start the sticker system all over again to do something at that point. I agree. I'd love to see one or two free trips. But I think when we introduce that is going to be key. Again, we want to study and adjust. We want to listen to everybody, but we also don't want to be changing things midstream. I think that it's really important that we start something, we continue to educate, to refine, but the back and forth of changing things is, I just don't want to
Right.
kind of hear that feedback of, now people can go 3 times for free and I already had to pay. And you might not be there every other week. You might not be doing projects every time. So if I only go and dump twice in a year and I've had to pay for it now, and then others are getting it for free, I may not need to use the bulky waste pile for another year. So I just want to be really sensitive of the fact that we should start with something, we should stick with it, educate, and continue to refine it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think consistency of staff of the answers and how we proceed with it
Totally.
is
Sorry, Tim.
is really
There's people
instrumental.
online,
I
so-
mean, if we don't have that, then I understand why residents
Yeah.
could be
No,
upset.
absolutely.
But I want to say that I thank everyone because I would say 95% of the
Yeah.
people, even when they disagree, treat the staff with respect up there.
Yeah.
But there are percentage that don't, and I really wish that people understand that the staff is just doing their job.
Yeah.
They didn't make these rules, they're just following them. So to give the staff up there a hard time, I think
Yeah.
I know that we've talked about penalties and banning people from the transfer station if they give too much of a hard time. And I think we need to stick with that as well,
Yeah,
because
there's
the
no,
staff shouldn't have to deal with the fallout of unhappy residents. That's Bob's job.
Exactly. That's why you get paid the big bucks. Tim, do you have another comment? So the question from the audience is, is there thought about going to dump on Sundays? It has been discussed. We're not budgeted for it for this upcoming budget year. It would increase the transfer station budget line. So it's something we have talked about though. And there's not a really clear no or yes on it. It's something we've discussed. It's just that at this particular point, we didn't budget going into this year. So maybe it'd be something we can talk about next year, depending on how we make out with fees and bulky waste fees and sticker fees this year, and maybe it would work. But it's just discussion stages at this point.
there's certainly a lot of support for it in people that I've talked to, but it certainly does have a budgetary impact. I think that we make a little mental note when we're starting the FY 25 budget. I barely recovered from the 24. But I think that we should definitely entertain that.
And then getting people to work that on something
Yep,
else,
yep.
something else.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for
Shauna,
coming
thank you.
and staying.
Jim?
Appreciate your feedback.
Okay, any other discussion on transfer station? Okay, hearing none, let's go to capital plan discussion. Christine, would you start this discussion for me?
So included in your packet is the capital plan request form that was used last year for the process. So we are starting to talk about the FY 25 budget, Nicole. So what we need to do is decide what the plan is going to be moving forward and what the process is so that we can get the request form out to all departments, boards, commissions, and affiliated agencies within town so that they can start putting together their information so that you as a board can then review everything and implement some sort of a new 5-year process as discussed by the Board of Finance. So when I first started here, there was a capital improvement work group that was myself, the PDZO, highway foreman, fire chief, ambulance president, selectmen, someone from the Board of Finance, and they met as a group to look at all the requests that were submitted by all different groups and agencies as discussed previously. And then kind of put those pieces together in a jigsaw to make a 5-year plan. Trying to work collaboratively to say, okay, if we need a new fire truck in this particular year, then we should push out highway equipment. And okay, if we're going to buy a new front end loader, let's save for it for 4 years and then buy it in the 4th year. Or okay, we're going to lease an ambulance and have it for a 5-year payment and estimate what that should be. So that was the process. So now we didn't follow that process this past budget cycle, so we need to see what you want to do moving forward. So this form just basically asked for what the item was, how much they think it's going to cost, how much you're asking for, if it should be bought up front or if we're saving for it, why do we need it, what the benefit is to the town, is it replacing an existing item within your fleet? If yes, when was that original item purchased? If we decided to not buy a new one, could we fix the one that we have? Are we going to sell the item that we're getting rid of so that it would bring revenue back to the town? Was this item in the previous 5-year plan? And we asked for actual quotes for the items so that someone didn't say, okay, I want to buy a pickup truck and it costs $10,000. And then when we actually go to buy it, it costs $50,000.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I like to treat each capital year start as a fresh, clean slate. So that if somebody said, okay, I thought last year I needed to get a pickup truck, but I really need 2 pickup trucks, or I thought I needed 2 pickup trucks, but I really need 1. This is their opportunity to say, okay, this is what I truly do need for the next 5 years. This is how it's adjusted from what I told you last year. These are my new quotes. This is the new figures, because we know the cost of things just keeps going up. And not just because someone said last year they needed something, not just automatically keeping it on the plan because they may not need it anymore. So I think we should always ask for requests. And if they said they needed that truck, tell us again that you need that truck and why you need that truck and why you need it this year or 3 years from now. So if you have changes to this, we can either get it out before your next meeting, or we can wait until your next meeting, make changes to the form, get it out then. And then I like to give people a month to get it back, only because if you give too much time, then they forget about it. So if we send it out after your next meeting, we could get forms back by the end of August, and then you can start looking at your comprehensive plan in September. That gives you September, October to put something together for the Board of Finance. So that's my thoughts, but I'm open.
Yes, yes, and yes. So, this is what I'm used to. I love, and I would love to, bring back that large group capital, work group, committee, subcommittee. I think that it is very important for all of our town services to know that there are other needs and hear how urgent those other needs are. I love that idea. I am in complete support of that. I am also, I'm okay with this form, but I absolutely would love to see the quote. I cannot hand anything in my line of work asking for a capital piece of equipment without the quote attached. And that quote might change by the time we buy it, but I have something. But these arbitrary figures of what this piece of equipment is going to cost does us no good whatsoever. So I think that a month is okay. I might be in favor of almost a month and a half, because it will take time for them. Like I would envision sitting down at this meeting with all of those key people, and all of those key people from each of those services comes with their 5-year plan in hand. And then whatever they're asking for that next capital season, that is what they come with quotes. And then I'm also used to having them rate in triage levels. I'm using healthcare terminology, but in levels of, this is my most urgent. I would love that, $1 million, fire engine, but this is what I need first and foremost, because I'm not gonna be able to run operations without it. So if you're asking for 3 pieces of equipment in this next capital campaign, rating those a triage level of 1, 2, and 3 in the order that you need them, so that when we have to go back as a work group and say, all right, we have $500,000 to work with, where are we gonna put it, and what are, then they've already rated what their urgency. That's my 2 cents.
So I would hate to prematurely put this out before we really tweak it, but to start, I think we need to talk about how we are moving forward with capital, and we need to define capital. So, and put it out there. So we can't put these out until we, as a board, define what our capital is. And I agree with us looking through things. I'm not 100% on board with getting that group back together again. To me, I didn't love how it happened before. First of all, the meetings weren't properly noticed. They were illegal meetings during that time.
They were not, there was not an exact board that was meeting.
Okay.
It was.
I'm
town
not gonna debate it
officials.
with you right now. But when 2 or more selectmen are at a group discussing town business, it's a little
So
different.
I have to disagree with you, because when myself and Anita went to those meetings, there's understanding that we would not speak. We're there to listen and observe. We did not speak. And I'll tell you, I never spoke at one of those meetings, nor did Anita Kincaid. Mike Ergo did all the speaking. We did not speak. And that's because I said to Mike, if we go, we have to call it as a Board of Selectmen meeting. He said, not if you don't speak. So myself, and you will not find any record of me or Anita speaking.
You're
at one of
right,
them.
because there's no records taking place.
Oh.
I think if this is the process, it should be on board. And I can tell you, I wrote Mike an email regarding that. And shortly after that email, the meeting stopped.
But why would you not want to get everyone together, as Nicole said, so people can hear what other people are asking for? If, how does the fire company know what the town garage is
I'm
asking for?
not saying, it would need to be restructured and done correctly.
Yeah.
And I
Uh,
think
y-
also the Board of Finance had a different take on those, because when you say the Capital Improvement Committee met, and this is the request, they thought from 2 members, one of each party, they thought that those were vetted out already out of that group. They didn't understand that also those are just department heads, employees coming up with that group, and nobody really vetting through that and saying this is part of that plan. So I think we just need to be careful on how
I remember telling
presented.
someone from the Board of Finance, when they asked me, it was about a piece of equipment, that I felt that was more of a wish list than a
Right.
vetted out list. Everyone came in, they gave their wish list. So I'm not saying that we couldn't recognize the meeting in a different format, but I think that if all 3 are going to be there and you want to speak and you want to speak and I want to speak, then it's going to be a Board of Selectmen meeting. And bringing one member of all these different committees together, but it's going to be a Board of Selectmen meeting open to the public.
But I think it should be open. If we're
So,
discussing.
all right, and that's
capital.
fine, but that's how you could have done it differently.
I
What-
agree.
What I chose to do is go and observe, because I want to hear what everyone else had to say, and I didn't have to speak. I would just want to listen to what everyone else was saying, and that's what Nita was supposed to do also, so.
So going back to making a definition for capital, did you guys review the information that I sent out after the tri-board meeting that had the capital definition from the audit, from the Board of Finance handbook for the state of Connecticut, and there were 3 sources,
Weren't we
and from
gonna-
our policies and procedures?
weren't we gonna do that on the September 12th?
No, we
tri-board
need to do
meeting?
that prior so that we
Prior.
can get this.
So
the
if
ball
we come
rolling.
up with a definition of capital, doesn't the Board of Finance have to sign off on that definition?
No.
Not technically.
No?
So they want to come up with a capital procedure for them, but technically, like Christine said, if we base it on what those 3 things, we just need to decide and say, this is what the town considers capital as we move forward.
Okay.
And maybe we can do that at our next meeting, and then it'll give us a chance to look at this form and tweak it and say, okay, capital's based on this. So when we send these to the departments, they understand what capital is. I mean, we had an issue with a mower 2 weeks ago, where our treasurer thinks it's capital. I partially think it's capital too, but without a definition, it's a little vague. So if we have the definition, then we send this out to the commissions and the departments. They can say, okay, this is capital, this is what we need. And base it on that. And I did write rankings on here too, because I do like that idea. I was gonna mention, but I liked how you talked about triage. Because that is important. Every departments, of course, would like certain things. I mean, when you work anywhere, there's certain things you would love, certain things you need, and then there's that fine balance.
Yeah.
But with a ranking, if we know, so we don't know how the capital plan's gonna work, or Board of Finance, like they said, they might come up and say, hey, we want to use this dollar value. So if we, as that process works, we can say, okay, well, if we have dollar values, we know the fire department's top two choices are this, and then go through it.
Christine, if we finalize what we consider to be capital, the definition of capital, and this form on the July 25th meeting, will that give us enough time
Oh,
to
absolutely.
get everything out?
Plenty
Okay.
of time. And I think when you have the conversation on defining what capital is, you need to think about the Board of Ed and their questions as to, is it, as we talked with the Board of Finance, you shake the building upside down and everything that doesn't fall out is capital, and that's included in the capital plan, and how that's going to be so that we can give them clear direction on what they need to include when they do their requests as well.
Because we can still work on our capital plan in the process as we get the request.
Yeah, I mean,
Because-
you're gonna get over $1 million worth of requests because that's what happens every year.
Yeah.
So, you don't need that guidance from the Board of Finance until you actually start narrowing things down and saying, this is the 5-year plan that we want to move forward with and that we're comfortable with. As you're just gathering all the information, you just need to have a definition so that if someone says, well, I want to put money in the budget for, I'm trying to think of something that's not capital. I don't know. So if they want to pick something and then you say, oh, well, that's not actually capital because that's your operating request. So preventative maintenance, if they wanted to put in for preventative maintenance on the HVAC system for the buildings across the street, that's not capital. That's your regular operating expense. That doesn't belong in your capital budget. Whereas money for a new boiler or a new roof belongs in the capital budget.
Okay. So if we are able to get this capital improvement committee together and meet, and then we as a group come up with at the end, and we would have to have a timeline, right? With recommendations, does that come back to us as a board to say the recommendations from the capital improvement plan are to move these things forward in this budget, and then we make a decision about what we think we can handle, and then that then goes to the Board of Finance for approval? Is that how we hope to have that committee function? Are they making recommendations, or at the end of the capital improvement process, whatever comes out of that board is what gets put forward for capital? That's what you guys decide.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's still, it works the same, kind of the same way as it does now. I mean, that committee comes back and they give us the information we need to better understand what the capital needs are, but ultimately it rests with
Okay.
us
Okay,
as far as how we want to move the budget forward.
okay.
See, I think we should be part of that capital group.
Oh,
The
most
three of us.
definitely.
So,
Oh, no,
So we're
I,
there for their discussions,
Yeah.
whether we talk or not. I
Oh,
still think it needs to be listed. at a
No,
meeting, but I think we need
I'm
to be
not
there to
gonna-
hear that
so
discussion.
just listed as a Board of Selectmen meeting open to the public.
yeah,
That's all.
I'm not gonna be able to not say something, and I do think that it's important for the Board of Finance, at least one member from Board of Finance to be there, because we heard so much feedback about the lack of structure with the capital process that it's gonna be, and then that person acts as a liaison to go back to their group and report out what has been discussed.
And I think it's important for us to be there, and a Board of Finance member there, because as we know and we see, staff members leave, staff members come. Chairs might
Exactly.
leave, but if there's no information being shared with everybody, then if that person leaves, that whole department could be void of getting what they need. And everyone's, I guess, you know, people's ideas change. One staff member might think we need this, they leave and the next person thinks this, but if we don't have those discussions so we understand the basis of it, I think.
Completely agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're gonna work on that for the next meeting, correct? And if
Absolutely.
you don't have them available, pull the emails that Christine sent out just after the charter board meeting, which you probably have it, you'll just, correct?
I have a quick question. So Brett, you've talked before about other towns' capital plans, including planning and zoning and the direction for the P O C D direction and all that. So what does that look like in a capital plan? Like, what's an example of
I'd
an
have to,
item?
I'd have to do some research on it. So if you look at, that came out of, I think there was discussion on state statutes where it talks about that, but also in the Board of Finance handbook, it talks about your capital plan, and it talks about they're one of the pillars, or I forgot definition of what they use to say they're the ones, you know, planning zoning is looking at the build out of town or things like that. So that might dictate what you might need as a town. So I think it's probably more based on the correlation of the P O C D
Okay.
with it.
All right,
and
so we
the
may not,
long-term outlook.
we may not have that for this first year since the P O C D is not done yet.
Right, unless we base it on some of the feedback from the last
Perfect.
P O C D.
Okay, any other discussion on capital? If not, we'll move on to tax refunds.
I'll switch and take them if you want.
Sure.
And you can do minutes. So I'll make a motion to approve tax refunds in a total amount of $4,196.16. To A-Car Leasing Limited, Stephen Brewster, East Cab LLC, Cody Lewis, Peck and Taneski PC, Christopher Post, Linda Pershak, and QPO Properties LLC.
A
Okay,
second.
okay. So we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the tax refunds as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Old business, demolition of the one-story 298 North Wesley Road. I am still waiting to get a change order, which I have not received, and now we're going on in a lot of weeks. And I think the longer that we wait for this, that's in our favor, that we're well beyond where we should have got this change order.
How many times have we reached out to them?
3 prior to I sent you that letter, and then once since then, so.
So they haven't even given us any other bills since the last one.
No. No bills. No, right? We have received no bills. Because what we were getting, payroll bills and there's been no one working over there since they did the cap, so. And they're paid up to date on everything that they did send to us. Vacancy and appointments. Good news is that, we offered the position to fill the administrative assistant's position, and she's starting on Monday. I think she's gonna start, her name is Jennifer Knight. She's gonna start working 10 to 2 to begin with and see how that works. We don't, as long as she gives us 4 hours and it's consistent, the 4 hours are consistent each week. And if she has a doctor's appointment or an appointment, we'll work around it. But I think you're gonna be, when you come by and meet her, I think you'll be happy. She seems like she's gonna be a good fit. That's the good news. The bad news is as I mentioned to you earlier, that our IT director, Jim Russell, will be leaving. And I have, and I think Christine sent you descriptions of what his job description is as we think of it from the town. And also we asked Jim to put together a list of his daily, weekly, monthly, and as needed duties.
Bob, can you, since we didn't discuss this prior, but the admin, what did we end up with a pay rate? 'Cause I know we did-
$18. Yep. And she had asked when
What
she,
was our range?
16 to 18. Yep.
We do have some savings for the first 3 week. It'll end up being the first 3 weeks of the year that we didn't have someone in that position. So we will need to do a transfer at end of year, but it's not gonna be as big because
Okay.
we had the vacancy for the
So
first.
no major budget.
Okay. Sorry about that. So back on the IT director, so we have a copy of his job description as we had it in the file for the IT GIS manager, and then we've asked Jim to list his daily, weekly, monthly, and as needed duties. We'd like to post this sooner instead of later. I also would like to have, quick discussions with school and possibly Preston, just to get feedback on what their thoughts are. I guess we did share believe it or not, we shared a, IT director with Preston years ago. From what I heard, it didn't work out great, but that was years ago, so I don't know whether it'd be different. One thing I worry about, if it's one of those where he's here 3 days, there 2 days, and if you notice when you read his list of things he does, there's a lot of troubleshooting that goes on. And if he's not here, we won't be able to troubleshoot. So, there's a lot of his position that we don't always see. He's being called in multiple areas because he works. Now, we used to have on the budget, we used to have 2 line items for the IT director. One was 30 hours for the town. I believe it was 5 or 10 hours for the fire station. In a while back, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we combined that. So it looked like he got an increase to 40 hours, but all we do is we took the 10 hours from the fire station and added it to the 30 hours to the town. To make one 40-hour line item. But he does do work at the new fire station, the old fire station, the senior center, 298 building. Does not work at all with the schools. They have their own team over there.
So the fire company, since they're a separate entity, they don't put any of this in their budget and we don't bill them.
Well, they
out
used to.
for-
It used to be in
No.
their budget.
No, it was not.
Oh, excuse me, it's our budget
So
for them.
What
Correct.
happened was, this position used to be 30 hours a week. When we built the new facility to house both the ambulance and the fire company together, the town took on a 10-hour-a-week burden for IT to cover that area. It was the same person, so he was increased from 30 hours to 40 hours, same pay rate, and the town took on that cost. It was under B26, public safety, but it was paid by the town. That was not paid by the ambulance or the fire
Correct.
company.
But then it switched to become all under one line item.
We
Correct.
just moved it in the budget. There was
So is
no-
that part of the lease or is that just an agreement that the selectmen made at that time?
It was before I was here, so I don't know
And I
the
don't know the answer
logistics.
either. I'd have to look into it. And he also works at the Parks and Rec building, correct?
So he covers all town facilities.
Right, well, that's a
so-
town department. So
right.
to me, that's different. So when you hear that he's working for outside,
So the equipment within the firehouse is purchased by the town as well. So he's still maintaining town equipment and town systems. He's just doing it. So basically the fire company is like a tenant that's walking into a building that the town supplies the majority of the stuff. They do pay for a lot of their own stuff and systems, but we're the ones that have purchased the server and the computers and the phone system and all the things that he's working on within there. So I think that's the rationale behind it.
yeah. And are we confident that this is a full-time, we need this as a full-time position?
I think when you spend some time looking at his list, I think you could see where it would be. I can't say that I'm always asking him every day what he's doing, but I know that there's a lot of times I can't find him because he's at the firehouse or he's at the senior center. And a lot of it is on call. I will tell you this, that when he's in the building and don't forget, we have a building with not a lot of young IT savvy people working in it. So, and that's just the way our staff is made up. But I know when I have a glitch, it's pick up the phone, Jim, my computer's stuck, my phone's not working, and he comes down and fixes it. But he also has to there's other things that he has to do for us, like I'm gonna ask him to show me how to make those signboards tomorrow, so I can at least make those. Because we're gonna have if we don't have another IT person in fairly quickly, we might have something come up, whether it be for the community conversation board, where I need to put signs around town, and I want to make sure that I know how to do that. So,
He's also responsible for all of the systems that we have within the town. So iWork and QuickBooks and QDS and Antoinette Systems as town clerk. I don't know what they're called. He also assists the registrars with their state election system. So he's doing a lot of things in the background that you don't always realize that he's responsible for. He's making changes to the website. He's doing things on social media. He's responsible for the GIS system and working with any geo systems on updates for that. He does the mapping for Conservation Commission. He's working on the maps for the POCD. He's responsible if we have to open the EOC in an emergency. He's responsible for that. He does the Everbridge municipal notification system. So it may not be something every second of the workday, but then when a printer doesn't work or when we have any other like system, it needs to be fixed immediately. He has to be available for that. So if we were sharing with someone somewhere else, we could be locked out of a system for an entire day and not be able to get work done.
Well, I mean, a lot of companies now are subbing out a lot of the IT work and, you know, people remote in. So I'm just wondering if there's a combination or something that, you know, as positions come up, it's our job to look at those and
Yeah,
say,
and
is it the best?
I think that I'm more in favor of seeing if there's any kind of collaboration we can do with the school.
Yeah, I agree.
Rather than, I do agree that it could be messy sharing with a different, town.
So they have two people over there right now, but, you know,
don't-
it's worth the discussion at least to see. I mean, we can still put out the position and see what do we have budgeted for this?
Whatever his pay was for the year.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you the range in the union contract.
Plus, don't forget what's going on right now with cybersecurity. Now, he's on a subcommittee for the cybersecurity for Demis 4. I just heard of, private schools that were just hacked and all their information was just put online because they wouldn't pay the ransom. And you're talking about medical, HIPAA stuff, IUPs, students, and that just went all over the internet because they wouldn't pay the ransom. If you remember about a week, maybe it was a month or two ago, I was hacked and emails,
You clicked on something.
emails went out from me, and I don't go into them personal on my town website, by the way, but emails went out from me that were somebody else was sending them. And Jim squashed that in a matter of like 15 or 20 minutes. So first time I got a call from someone say, hey, you just sent me this, I can't open it. Jim come out and goes, okay, tell anybody else, don't open it, and I'm gonna squash it right now, and he did. So he was able to do that in like 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah. So the high range is 73,257. And the low is 69,056
With them.
with benefits.
So, but I'm just thinking again with my just statement now, cybersecurity is so important. Towns are getting hacked, people are getting hacked left and right. There's all sorts of scams out there. He sends us weekly or bi-weekly. I get a test that goes to my computer that I have to pass each time. And it's taught me a lot about, even in my own life, about phishing, computer phishing and so on. So he does that to all the town employees, get those emails that we have to pass. And now, I'll be honest with you, if I don't do one within a day or so, it comes down, Bob, you haven't done that test yet. I know I gotta do it,
But it might be worthwhile at least talking to the school. I mean,
Yeah.
say we still had to hire an assistant one or something, there might be a variation that would be beneficial to the town
Well,
as a whole.
I
right?
think we'd be doing it disservice if we don't at least ask the question.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, so but we'd like to put that out sooner instead of later.
When is his last day?
Tuesday, because he's taking his last 3 days as vacation days. However,
Yeah, his last official day is the 21st.
21st is the last official
Yeah.
day.
He gave
Oh.
notice. This is happening.
Okay.
So give us a
How many
2-week notice.
weeks Did he give?
Two? Well, I told you on Saturday, he had already given it that
Yeah.
previous week. So he has offered to, if we get in a mess where we have to call him. If something happens at night, if we're in a meeting like this and there's an issue and we haven't got a new IT person, he's helped. Christine's called him before
Yeah.
at the beginning of a meeting because we couldn't get
So
online.
what is our backup if we do have something? I mean, literally next week, he's done.
Yes.
We haven't even posted it yet.
I'd like to post it tomorrow if I
Yep,
can get
I'm
the go ahead from
completely
you guys.
in support of that, but what is our backup when he leaves as far as, does the Council of Government, that they don't have anything kind of a,
No,
Yes.
Jim is willing to help out
yeah,
in the evening times to come in and do things that need to get done if things need to get done but if something happens in the middle of the day, I mean, I will do what I can do. I feel of all the people on staff in the building, I have the most knowledge to help, but I am not the IT guy.
I think it's
so.
between you and Cecile. I'm not sure.
All right, so do we need a motion to approve this?
Um,
Right?
Post
We
it.
have to
We-
post it?
I think we need a motion to hire someone. Do we need a motion?
Yeah,
to
I think
post it?
since you're
Yeah,
not making
since
any
we're-
changes, we're.
I don't
we're
mind
good.
making one if you feel.
No,
so.
No, but we
and we're
are
not-
with the caveat that you're gonna talk with the Board of Ed.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and we're posting with until filled, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So it'll be posted with the salary range, open till filled. I mean, and we can ask the school if they can be our assistants in the
You
interim.
would think that,
I
that
know,
they might-
I know,
That's, okay, so that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
That we would at least have somebody. I think that that conversation definitely needs to happen.
yeah, and
um,
I'll talk to Greg,
just from
or
a
to Jim.
liability.
He has a good relationship with Greg at the school. So I think, and he's helped out for the school when, they've had issues as well.
Okay.
So,
Good.
um,
I feel better about that.
I mean, it'd be nice to know that somebody's in town if
Yeah,
something happened. can run over 'em.
exactly.
Okay.
Good suggestion, good question. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, ARPA funds, you see on the last line, the EDC did vote on Monday. They had a quorum to discontinue the small business program. And that would bring our ARPA funding back to 90,326.79 as of today. The only thing left that might come back would be anything we left over from the demolition project. Okay, so that's where we are at that point. Plan of Conservation Development, there's a meeting on the 17th of the steering committee group. That's Monday, I believe. And they'll be part of the community conversation in September or whenever we plan to have that. Other than that, there's nothing. Oh, she did have, and I can get you copies if you'd like to. She sent what she had done so far. Because Pat Lewis had asked if they could start looking at what's done so far, so they're not getting all this at the last minute, at the 11th hour. So she did send the package to Ed, and I forwarded it to Pat myself to make sure she got it, of everything that she's done so far. Would you like me to send that to you guys?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank
So just so you know, Bill Ricker will not be here on Monday. He's
He will.
fishing,
Yeah,
I went to the,
he's on vacation.
commission meeting, so just to let you know.
Minutes, Brett, you want to do
I
those?
will make a motion to approve the minutes of June 29th, 2023.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? The hearing none, all those that want to approve the minutes from that date, June 29, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any public comments?
I actually have one comment before just from the Hewlett Farm Committee. I was at their meeting. So right now they are going to change the signs, just so you guys know in public, they're changing the signs in the next few weeks, for dogs on leashes to follow our town ordinance in parks. That dogs need to be on a leash, but they will be discussing future of maybe bringing it up of a potential change of ordinance to see what the public's take would be on allowing dogs off leash, but they felt it was best to follow the town ordinance for now.
Have to tell my
Thank you for
daughter.
that. Any public comment? Anybody online still? And Alan and Brian, Alan, don't speak. I'll see you tomorrow. Brian, anything? All right, so. All right, so Brian Ratherin's commenting that he is also in agreement with the ordinance. All right, thank you for that. Our next meeting is July 25th, 2023, and I'll entertain a motion for
Motion to
adjournment.
adjourn.
Motion to
Aye,
adjourn.
second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the meeting is ending at exactly 9:30. Thank you.